just do a minor subdivision.
Well,
Keep the rest of the houses the remainder. Yeah, that's,
breaking and entering.
be quick, just look for the planning commission.
I was just gonna say, that's not the kind of thing why we, no, we have normally.
He's really just, you know, he's come up with a price, I don't know if that's the right price. The last thing that I heard, well, I'm working on it, up in that area was, and he's wanting about 7 tenths of an acre. So, awful lot less than that, he's putting improvements in it. And I said,
Yeah, it shows the whole. Any major thing.
Okay, let's go ahead and call this meeting to order.
Move forward, so.
It is 5:30, we'll go ahead and start the meeting.
It's a dog-eat-dog world, and I'm wearing bone underwear.
Lisa said I'm conducting the meeting tonight. The first item on the agenda is approval of minutes. It's the February 1st, 2021. Any corrections or additions? Now would be the time to make those.
I have a small one. Let's see, it is, not quite set up, but was, my notes say, page 4, line 22. One, can you remind me the name of that grant that we got, the $75,000 grant, is the
Safe walking stones.
Safe routes to school.
Safe routes to school.
And I know Kathy's not here, but if we could include that on that line 22, page 4, I'll send a note to Kathy on that. Thank you. Just to make sure it'll state what that grant was for. Thank you.
Any other additions or corrections? Man, we're quiet. Okay, sounds good. A motion be in order?
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
Thank you, Jake. Second by Mike. All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes unanimously. Thank you. Now, a moment for open session. Anyone here to address the council in open session? Anyone on line? We good?
Yep, we're good.
Okay. All right, we'll close that. Next item is number 4, major subdivision, Lakeview Holdings West Condo Plat, 31 South, 1800 West. And Mike, I assume you're gonna lead us on
I'm
that?
gonna take this off just for a minute while since I'm standing so back
Sure.
here. So Mr. Billing has applied for, to convert the 2 buildings that he has under construction into commercial condominiums. They will each be 5-unit condominiums. The planning commission approved site plan approval for this last March. So the first building's almost completed, the second one, Joel, I think you just got a building permit for that second one. So we've already been through the site plan approval process. It's located in the light industrial zone. For condominiums, we really follow the state condominium law. And then our major subdivision approval is the process we go through with Lindon City. So a few exhibits here. Here's the plat is 3 pages, so you can see the 5 internal units that will be condominiumized. You can see the floor square footage is on this sheet, and then the last sheet is just the vertical elevations for the condo plat. So it's 3 pages. The planning commission recommended approval to the city council with a few conditions. Let me pull those up. One, that the applicant continue to work with city staff to make all final corrections to the plat for recording. We're nearly complete on that. Engineering did their second review today. They just have one comment left to make on that plat. prior to plat recording, the applicant will provide staff with a final Mylar to include notarized signatures of owner's consent to dedication as identified on the attached subdivision plat. Prior recording, the applicant will provide staff with final set of CCNRs and bylaws to include notarized signatures. The plat will meet the applicable requirements as found in Lindon City Development Manual. Final CCNRs will be recorded with the subdivision plat and all items of the staff report. So, does the council have any questions?
No, a question, just a comment. I went out and looked at the existing building, and I assume the one that behind it is going to look similar. It's a very, very attractive building. I think they've done a really, really good job of meeting and in some cases exceeding our architectural standards. It's very attractive. That was my impression as I drove up and walked around, so.
Randy, you had a comment, or?
It was gonna be almost exactly what Mike was saying. I drove out there and it's a beautiful building, and if it's anything like that, it's gonna be something very beneficial for the city.
Discussion, questions?
I think Adam sent that article around. I deal with a lot of small business owners. This is exactly what everyone is looking for right now. So, good that we can provide, however many more units for our business community. I think they are in desperate need of this flex space, and I support it. I think the planning commission's done a good job vetting this, and I'm fully supportive.
So was that a motion?
That was a motion.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Jake, a second by Randy. Any further discussion? Call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That sounds unanimous. Thank you. And next item is,
Hey, I'd like to thank Mike for helping me.
Good.
in this. I'm just a dumb construction worker, but he really helped me through the process.
well, I'm glad we got through the process.
Give him an extra piece of cake.
All right. Thank you. Okay, Brian, I guess we're doing training. Is that the plan, or
Yeah.
everybody get their
Why don't we?
meal and then he can?
And to go ahead and get your meal, this is training that everybody has gone through multiple times, so I'll just talk as you guys get your meal. There are a couple new things, so I'll call out your attention on those two small little things that have changed since the last 12 times you've seen it. And so please go ahead.
Randy?
You wanna just wait a couple minutes and they'll grab it, or you're just gonna start
I'll
now?
just get going.
Okay.
By the time the line's through, I'll be done, so.
Alright.
Kathy, did you put names down? I honestly don't remember what I ordered.
Yes, there are names, yes.
You were
Surprised.
the one.
Chef's surprise.
Okay, this is just our annual training that we do every year. And remember that, the reason we do this is to make sure that we are following the legislature's intent, and our own intent really, to make sure that what we do in the public's eye with full disclosure and all of our deliberations in the open. So that's the policy. Definition of a public body, that's the city council, the planning commission. It's any body that has any administrative, executive, or legislative function that consists of two or more people, expends or disperses taxes, has a spending power, and is vested with authority to make decisions regarding the people's business. So we have a few committees, the tree committee, those types of committees. Because they can expend money, they need to be, their meetings need to be done in public, they are a public body. Definition of a meeting is just simply when you convene the public body and there is a quorum present. And you're doing it for the purpose of discussing or acting upon a matter over which that body has jurisdiction. So if the council gets together to plan Adam's birthday, surprise birthday party, it's an administrative function, but it's not a public meeting because, let me hit one more.
Adam doesn't
I
really
don't
know
want
how old he
anybody
is.
there, is that?
It's not a chance meeting, it's not a social meeting, and it's not convening the public body for which they have, both executive and legislative function if no public funds are being appropriated, so everybody's bringing potluck to Adam's birthday party. We're not expending any money. and it's solely an administrative function. Doesn't require any formal action by the city, then that does not constitute a public meeting. Definition of a quorum simply means a majority of that public body. Does not, again, mean a meeting of two elected officials by themselves when no action is being taken. Location of public meetings, workshops, executive sessions. Workshops and executive sessions, that's a closed session, the executive session, need to be held on the same day as a regularly scheduled meeting and at the same location as a regularly scheduled meeting, unless all of the meetings for that day are moved to the same location. So if we're wanting to go out and inspect, you know, Mike takes us down to look at the new landfill equipment, and we're going to actually meet and vote on something, if we do everything there, everything can be at that location. But generally, we need to have the meeting here as well. And again, you have to give proper notice. The public needs to know where we're going, what we'll be doing there. Or there is an exception, of course, in the case of an emergency. In those emergencies, it's important that we take as reasonable steps as we can to let the public know what's going on, and as soon thereafter, we need to come back into a formal meeting, ratify what's been going on, and make sure that it's, again, just done in the public's eye. Public notices and meetings must be given at least 24 hours in advance. They have to include an agenda, the date, the time, the place, and then we have to publish at least the annual meeting schedule as well. Kathy does a really good job of taking care of that for us. Agendas are important. We cannot take any action on an agenda unless, on an item unless it's on the agenda. Agenda items have to be specific enough to notify the public of what's going to be discussed. It can't be super broad and super vague. And a topic not on the agenda may be discussed during an open meeting if the topic was raised by the public and not a member of the public body, and no action is taken on that agenda. Again, exception for emergencies. Minutes, we have to keep minutes of all of our open meetings. They need the date, time, and place of meeting, the names of the officers present, the substance of the matter that are discussed with a summary of those discussions, the name of public members who are commenting and giving a summary of their statements, the record taken by name of any votes. And again, Kathy does a great job for us. We've not had any problems ever. Minutes that are waiting approval, we have to have the minutes online within 30 days while they're pending approval. Once they've been approved, we have to have them online and open to the public within 3 days after approval and ratification of those. Recordings of open meetings, we record every meeting. We do not edit those, we just post them online. This, of course, excludes our closed meeting, and we'll talk about that in more detail just a little bit. And again, those recordings have to be made public within 3 days. Don't have to do a recording if we're doing a site visit. Now, and again, we're starting to see this a little bit more, and there's some groups coming around. Anybody can record the city meeting. They can come in, they can do an audio recording, a video recording, as long as they're not disrupting the meeting. They can set up a tripod. That is their right, and that's both protected by the First Amendment and by this statute. It's in Title 52. All meetings are deemed to be open, excuse me, unless they are closed, according to statute. Closed meeting may be held if first there's a quorum present, you can't, and you're at a meeting that has been properly noticed. It gives notice that we're intending to close the meeting, and then there has to be a vote. And 2/3 of the members present have to close that meeting. A supermajority is required to go into a closed meeting. And then you have to do it for just one of the purposes that are authorized under the statute. So, is everybody able to hear me okay? Am I loud enough?
That's all.
You're good.
Okay. Perfect. So what are some of the purposes for closed meetings?
State transactions.
Real estate transactions. We'll just go through them really fast.
Litigation.
Adam's birthday party.
Adam's birthday party, so keep it surprised. A discussion of character, mental, physical competency of an individual, that allows us to close a meeting. Collective bargaining, we don't do that around here too much, so, but pending or reasonably imminent litigation gives us a right to close. Purchase of the real estate, as was said. Deployment of security plans. We can close that so the public doesn't figure out what we're doing and try to thwart our security plans. Allegations of criminal misconduct can be closed as well, but there's some specific rules on that. It's important to understand that closed meetings are for discussion only. Official actions have to be taken in the open meeting. So, and again, interviews of persons applying to fill an elected position cannot be conducted in a closed session. Anybody midterm appointments, those individuals have to be interviewed in open meetings. This is a new rule, this is one of the new ones. You cannot close a meeting to discuss you can't circumvent that last rule, they've added this in. You cannot close a meeting to discuss the competency or professional character of a candidate. You know, even though you don't wanna, talk too often, when you're hashing people's credentials and trying to decide who you should appoint. The new rule is you cannot close that. You can't do the interviews. You can never do the interviews with the candidate in a closed meeting. Well, now you can't even close that meeting to discuss that person's competency and character. That has to be done in an open session as well. Records of the closed meeting, they have to be recorded. We must record all of our closed meetings, and they have to include the date, time, and place. But these recordings are not open to the public. We don't post those. We keep those in case somebody challenges what took place in that meeting. They'll be available for review by a judge in camera, and he can determine whether or not they need to be turned over to the public. Now, we don't have to keep written minutes, but we can if we want to, but the same rules apply to those written minutes. There is no requirement to turn on a recording if we're discussing the physical, mental competency, character, professional abilities of an individual. But in order to do that, we have to specifically draft an affidavit that says we've turned off the recording, the mayor has to sign it, or whoever's presiding at that meeting, that says all we discussed was this issue. We didn't discuss anything else. So, if we need to do that at some point. Electronic meetings, again, have to have the anchor location. Just have to make sure that it's set up so that people can watch and participate and make their comments available. Of course, there is the new COVID rule that says we don't have to have an anchor location if the mayor or the chair of the body makes a written determination that having an anchor location would create a substantial health risk to the individuals who need to be present. That declaration is good for 30 days, but in the future, if there's another pandemic or something like that, this is a permanent change. It's not just an exception to the statute, it's included in the statute, so we have that ability if we need to use it in the future. Texting and emails, this is one point I wanted to talk to you about. Throughout the years, I've always said, look, there's nothing in the statute that expressly says you can't text and email each other during an open meeting. But I've always advised against it. It's not a good idea. But there was and the statute says that nothing should be construed to prohibit texts and emails at a time when the public body is not convened. Now, this was kind of ambiguous because there's nothing in the statute itself that specifically prohibits it. And this statute's saying, well, you can't interpret anything in here to prohibit emails and texts outside of an open meeting. So there's been a debate. Some attorneys have always said, I think it's by statute that you should not be able to do that. Well, this year, there was a case, Wallingford versus Moab. Now, it wasn't directly on this point, but the Court of Appeals in that case really focused on the language in the purpose under Title 52.4.101, that it's the legislature's intent that all deliberations be conducted in the open. And there were some hints and some indications. This case out of Moab had more to do with the planning commission and whether, it was really land use based. But the judge threw out some language talking about how important it is that all deliberations be done openly. And he mentioned that bodies that try to skirt that rule by texting or using other forms of communication during an open meeting may subject themselves to scrutiny, is what he said. So I'm changing my legal advice. We should not only should we not, but under this language from this court case and looking at how they done it, we can't text and email one another during an open meeting. Because again, this is what we may be texting, how did the soccer game go? But of course, what the public thinks is, how much in kickbacks are we getting on this project? They just assume the worst when they see one person texting, puts it down, looks over, the other guy picks up the phone, looks at the thing, and then looks over, and it's clear that there's communication going back and forth. It just raises too many questions, and I think there's a risk there.
So in my time on the council, I'm not aware of us ever texting during a meeting, except if someone says, I think, for example, Jake a couple of meetings ago said, oh, this picture of how they drew the bicycle path. Oh, let me show you what that looks like. I meant to send it earlier. So in that instance, should we send it to Adam, who then sends it to all of us?
Yeah, and again, if you state, hey, I'm gonna text you everybody, I'm gonna, and you let them know what you're doing, we're doing it in the open and,
Okay.
and we're not gonna run into that problem.
All right.
So, yeah,
So is that just between elected officials?
right,
Yes.
yes.
So can I text them?
During an open meeting you're talking about?
Yeah, during an open meeting. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot of problem with that. If you're texting somebody, hey, remember to,
Yeah, remember to
Address
say
this.
X, Y, and Z.
right. I don't think that's inappropriate. But between members of the body, whether it's the planning commission or the council or whoever, we shouldn't be texting and emailing back and forth
That
to avoid.
doesn't happen often, but
No.
occasionally I'll just send a message to somebody who's talking about a
Say
specific
this.
issue and say, hey, a reminder about X, Y, Z, whatever.
Right.
So, okay.
So, and again, the reason it wouldn't
Vacation.
apply to us, Adam, is we don't have that decision-making authority. We're not on the body, we're not part of the board or the council. We're just giving advice and it's not open deliberations that have to be.
So I can text my wife saying, hey, we're going long,
Yep,
punish me when I get home, whatever. Okay.
yeah, that's no problem at all. It's just in between
Punishment, please.
members of the council.
Brian?
Yes,
And I don't know if you'll cover this later, but what about messages when we're communicating in an email thread? Should we be responding to the body that sent it to us and not to the all?
you know what, again, going back to this section here, it does say, hey, if you're not in an open meeting, there's nothing here that prohibits you from texting one another, and that has been interpreted to include everybody, so.
We're doing it all as a body.
Right.
It's okay as a body.
And that's okay, because remember, and I've got a slide, just remember, text messages, emails, those are subject to grandma, and they're gonna come out, and they're going to be available for the public to inspect. So as long as you're not in open meeting, feel free to text and email each other.
Yeah, this is sort of tangentially related, but on the North Point Solid Waste Special Services District, I got a call from a realtor friend of mine that had someone that was interested in buying the excess property that we have there. And first I talked to the director, but then my question was, I knew to formally act on it, we'd have to meet as a board, would have to go into executive session, or whatever you wanna call it, closed session. But would it have been appropriate for me just to take a straw poll and just say, what are your feelings about selling that ground? We've got someone that's interested.
I don't think that that would be inappropriate in the, under the statute. But again, understanding that full deliberation, if we're doing anything to get around the act, that's a problem.
Okay.
If you're saying, hey, I don't wanna discuss this in public, so I'm sending it out to you guys, that's gonna violate the act and.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
But if we're just simply, like you said, trying to get a straw poll, is this something that I should pursue? Are people interested in this?
We don't want them to prepare and try to come to our meeting if it's
Right.
not even a possibility.
Right, exactly. Those types of discussions are all right.
Okay, thank you.
And then just the consequences of failing to comply with the act. Courts can set aside any action that the city's taken if we haven't complied with the Open Meetings Act. There's not gonna be any penalties, because we can just redo it, but we could be hit with attorney's fees, which are significant. Anytime you get into litigation, you're talking of tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees, if it goes all the way up on appeal and whatnot. So there is some exposure, some cost, but any suit to set aside one for a violation, any type of action for a violation of the Open Meetings Act has to be done within 90 days, or within 30 days if it's regarding to a bond. And then again, if anybody intentionally violates the act, hey, the act, I don't wanna talk about this in public, and I don't care what the statute says, an intentional action, that subjects you to a Class B misdemeanor, so. All right. Anybody got any questions? Sounds good.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Okay. We need to close the meeting? Okay. Here we are. We skipped the eat session, but keep eating. It's all good.
You do that well. Yeah, I just wanna thank Kathy really quick for setting up and getting food and making things nice. She curtsied for us, so.
Thank you, Kathy.
And, she cut up strawberries to go on your chocolate
Wow.
cake, so take advantage of that.
Fantastic.
Makes it better. I don't know if anything can make that complicated, right?
Let's see, we wanted to go through, first, Kristen, just give you a quick overview on the budget calendar.
So I handed out a budget calendar for everyone. And, we're working on getting the, department head requests right now. I do want to draw your attention to this yellow highlighted on May 3rd. That's gonna be the time where we really discuss. I mean, if you wanna discuss anything before that, great. But after that, I would prefer that all the discussion happen that night or before that, so that I can start working with firm numbers and things. So, I'll present the budget in different drafts, the tentative, the proposed, and then the final, from April to June. And we have a work session on that May 3rd, and if there's any other work sessions that we wanna schedule, let me and Adam know.
Thanks very much, Kristen. Okay, next, just a quick highlight of our sales and property tax, just to give you an update on those funding sources. Sales tax just continues to shock me. In a good way.
Yes.
So this is a graph showing each of these red humps right there is the entire year. This is our last 6 months. We were thinking thinking over these last couple of years that we were really gonna level off in sales tax. The big game changer is the state requires online purchases now as submit sales tax. So we're seeing, we get a sales tax report that's, goodness, like 30 pages every month. And it's amazing how much little tiny purchases from different companies, you add all that up online, it makes a big difference. But we are starting to see recently in these last 6 months, doTERRA has popped up. So some of their sales is showing up. And then the construction-related businesses, I mentioned in that email I sent you guys earlier, they're just doing gangbusters business. So keep that in mind when we're thinking of sales tax. I would estimate a good quarter of our top 20 sales tax producers are not retail-oriented businesses. They're construction, industrial-related businesses. Sunrock, truss manufacturing, EMC West selling lumber and building materials, Roper Supply is another huge one. So our industrial zone is bringing in a healthy sales tax base, so just keep that in mind.
Expensive right now. While we're still on sales tax, I'd like to point out that, year-to-date, so even though we're in February, we've only received sales tax for sales through November. And so with those 5 months, comparing those same 5 months to the same 5 months last fiscal year, we are 20% higher.
How much?
20% higher. In comparing those 5 months to this
Phil's
last
over
5
there
months.
licking his chops.
Something I did want to also, before I get off of this graph, just to highlight, so in the Great Recession, things were going great in 2005, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, we really slumped. From the bottom of that trough to get back to where we were averaging, it was a 9-year difference. And so that downturn, as far as sales tax revenue, had a significant impact on sales tax revenues for the city. So
Say again?
when entities talk about recovery, we are in that same mode in an economic downturn that was that significant. So this is just another way of graphically representing. This gets really busy, but this black line with the yellow dots is our latest 6 or 7 months there of sales tax. Property tax, we're continuing to see just real gradual increases year after year, mostly due to new growth. Our rate is the lowest property tax rate that we've ever had as a city. And let me pull up. Just a comparison with other Utah County cities, just as an FYI, and this is an apples to oranges comparison, but just as an FYI, our rate itself and what we would collect on a $300,000 home is just under $200 a year. Over the last several years, just as an FYI, we had looked at a prior council member's home and his value, and just as a, and the reason I picked his house is because it's been there a long time, and so we have a lot of history. This was Matt Bean's home, and in 2020, he actually got a building permit, added, I think it was a detached garage, and then he did some remodeling on his home. So his value went up quite a bit, but our city rate actually went down, and what he is paying is pretty much the same. And so that blue line on the bottom of this graph is the Lindon city property tax that we collected off of that property for the last 27 years. Basically the same dollar amount for that 27 to 30. So you can see a property tax increase from the school district, and then from the county is this green line. So just an FYI that you have extremely low property tax rates in Lindon. At some point, that buying power is going to continue to diminish. And I want you to keep that in mind. I've talked about considering incremental inflationary decreases at some point. I think that would be beneficial to explore that. I know that's taboo, but just want you to keep that in mind.
Well, one of the things that you've discussed, Adam, is, in talking with the county and how they calculate and tabulate, you would assume that as the valuation of home rises, that Lindon cities take would incrementally rise with that, but they redo the calculation so that sales tax stays stable. It actually, the effective tax rate goes down. And so one of the things, for example, Alpine School District sometimes will just do an effective tax rate increase or a bond. But one of the things they did more recently was they said, oh, we're not actually going to ask for an increase in the rate. We're just gonna say that the rates will not fall below a certain percentage. And so that is something to potentially explore. Do we want to, because as our percentage, it gets retabulated down, down, down. We've talked about that might be one way to approach it, just to feel like we're keeping with the stability of the buying power, but not really implementing upon the citizens exactly an increase per se, but just.
I know two cities, Spanish Fork and Payson, Remained and others did that. They kept the same rate last year as their prior tax year. Technically, you have to go through all the hearings and everything on that because that equates to people paying more than they did before. And so, but yes, that is an option. Utility rates, just an FYI, Public Works and our city engineers are going to be updating our utility rate study. In prior years, we've actually had JUB engineers, hopefully this looks familiar, do a utility rate study and provide us estimated increases that we would need for water, sewer, stormwater, and then any of our secondary pumping and some of the other fees that we're collecting down in the Anderson development. Their estimated increases, they actually on each of our utilities, they projected out several years. For water, it was estimated at an essentially inflationary increase of 3%, sewer 4%, stormwater 3%, and those would be the smallest increases that we would collectively have over the last 7 or 8 years. So
But that won't include capital improvement projects in those
That does.
projections, or we want to make sure we're doing that.
So
Good.
this includes those inflationary and then everything else that's in that. So, and we have looked at this. In some years, we actually decreased, based on their study in 2017-18, water went down 1%, and then sewer went down 13% in 2018-19. So we've gone both directions on some of these based on the results of those studies. So we're anxiously awaiting NOAA and Trent's findings on that. We'll bring that to the council once we have an updated number. So
Just a quick question. By doing that in-house, apparently, what does that save us? Just, if you don't know off the top of your head, that's okay.
I would estimate that saves us probably anywhere between 10 and 20 grand.
So it's not chump change.
Speaking of which, we're continuing to track our shift away from third-party engineering and the cost of NOAA and Trent. And I think I mentioned that later here, but there is still good value there. I think we're getting better results, better service, faster responses, and we're saving money.
That's good.
And the same with legal, as we looked at that, bringing Brian and Jodell in-house was financially a great move, but with the end product and having them here 24/7 has been very, very good.
That's because Jodell came, so.
I just wanted to give you a heads up on the park tax. We are nearing into that 10-year window, so when the voters approved that. It's only valid, so they approved it in November, and then it became effective the following April. So this 10-year window that they approved that for ends in April of 2024. So in the 2023 November election of 2023, that has to go back on the ballot if the council wants to renew that. And so I just want to put in a plug for the council members to promote that whenever you can. We cannot technically, quote, promote it as a city and use any expenditures to promote that. We can provide facts, but you as elected officials can hit the streets and promote that. And so I know something that Heath is trying to do is anytime we have projects that is even partially funded by the park tax, he's put up some banners, and we have some permanent stickers and things like that that he's trying to put on things. Stuff like the more recent pickleball courts, all of those were partially funded out of park tax. So most things we're trying to put some money into whatever it may be. If it's new playground equipment, we're putting something from park tax into a lot of that stuff, just to help promote projects that are being done with it. It's a big dollar amount. It's about $600,000 a year is what we're
Last year
projecting.
was 650, and if we continue at the rate we're at right now, we'll get 708 this year.
So that's all going into facilities and new improvements, and if it doesn't get passed, we're out that much immediately. So it's a big dollar amount.
It's virtually transparent. I mean, obviously it's there, someone that was looking for it could find it, but I've never gotten any comments on about you guys, about that onerous park tax.
No, 1/10 of 1%. I think it passed, what, like 66-33, or was it 60-40?
It's very
It
favorable.
seemed like it
66,
passed.
I think.
Yeah, 66
That's good
seems to
news.
be the number. No, I think we can all campaign on that. I think that's,
Absolutely.
that's it.
And I
Awesome.
think something for our residents to consider is that the majority of the sales tax that we are benefiting from are from people that don't live in Lindon City. And so, when we ran numbers back before this campaign, Kristen and I looked at a lot of state numbers, and what I recall is we were estimating it was more than 80% of our sales tax revenue is from people that don't live within Lindon City. So something to keep in mind, and if people ask about it, we're really benefiting from a large commercial and industrial sales tax base that has broad serviceability for the region.
Well, and it's so many other cities now have adopted some sort of a zoo tax or, park arts tax. It's pretty ubiquitous now. I think they're seen favorably across the
At the
state
time,
now.
weren't we only like the second
We were
municipality
pretty
in the
early
county?
adopters, which was Lindon.
It's a wonderful.
Seemed like
Yeah.
behind Orem was the second one.
My brother, who's a state attorney, he used to work for the state, called me after that passed. He says, wow, I think you are the only city or anything that passed a tax increase of any kind that year we passed it. Now, American Fork and all these other cities have passed it. It's passing favorably because you can see what the benefit is tangibly, I think.
Any questions on any of that stuff so far? Okay, Kristen, you wanna go over that outlook?
That screen needs to be bigger somehow.
Don't settle on it, it's bigger.
You wanna drive in movie?
So here's a
You guys
graph
say just my
of
knobs.
our debt service payments for the next 10 years. that big one right there at the first, that's this current year, and that's paying, this blue is paying off the, public safety building. So here's like a better list to see what payments we're making each year. These top two are general fund supported, well, officially, and then you've got this, the pool bond right here, which is also with our sales tax. And then these others are, supported by revenue. And so they're listed this way because like the further down you go, the longer out the payments are. You can see the maturity dates over on this side. So, on the public safety building, it was supposed to be paid off in 2031, and we paid it off 10 years early. And it's saving, I just walked away from my paper, about $200,000 in interest. And then this is for the Lindon View, park area that we're purchasing from the county. And so that next, we've made this payment, and then this, we've got one more payment, and it's done. And it was really nice. We got it for $100,000, no interest, paid $10,000 a year for 10 years. So it was really nice. Do you have any questions on any of this?
A lot of the markets are really low right now. What do we have to do to just price out refinancing on debt? Do we have to engage with Birmingham and those guys, or is there an easy way for us to just take a look from a refinance standpoint?
We've always gone through Lewis Young in the past.
I just don't want to incur a large cost, but I really, I mean, I look around and interest rates have just dropped so much in a lot of these capital markets that I'm curious where we would be on some of these if there isn't a way to structure these and lower our rate. But
We can see where we're at on those. I know with this 2015 sales tax, we can't refund it for 10 years.
it's got the prepay on that one,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
On one of the enterprise funds, it's extremely low, it's less than 1%.
And it, yeah, it's probably, so it's, I think it's the sewer, the 2011, because that one was done through the state.
We can look though, Jake.
Just look, I mean, I think it's always a healthy practice from a debt standpoint to just look and just lower than ever right now.
We went through that 4 or 5 years ago.
Is the Orem waste, it's the sewer plant. And it's 0% interest, we're just paying Orem back.
Naturally, it's not just the interest rate, but it would be the full load of fees and everything on the front end to weigh.
Can you email us that one?
Sure.
I know we've received it over the years, but just the latest updated one, that'd be great.
Is there any other questions? That is all I have on the debt.
Just an FYI, I know we've got, as far as long-term projects, stormwater is really the big one, and there's some things that we expect we can piecemeal into that, but that may be, in our discussions, the more likely one that we may have to pull down some bonds in the future to be able to afford some of the capital improvement projects that are associated with that, so we're keeping an eye on that. JUB's hopefully finishing our stormwater master plan any day now, so.
Speaking of that, I think some of you might have gotten a letter from a citizen just saying, hey, I keep seeing the different utilities going up, and I know that we had, what was it, a 5 or 7 year from the past JOB review. Are we kind of finishing that out now where the citizens may see that we just kind of stay, we're not having to jump every year?
Inflationary range updates is what is projected over the next several years, and except for stormwater is probably the unknown right now, so 3 to 4% would be what we would anticipate may come out of their study.
Okay.
So, and I met with that individual, and he was comparing, literally, he had compared bills from like 20 years ago, and so the expectation that my rates will never increase over the entire
Like the property
life
tax.
of my home, I mean, that's just unrealistic, and so.
Like secondary
We
water.
said on
Secondary.
Secondary is legitimate.
To remind him of that.
So,
One that hasn't changed.
Adam, if when you're you're talking about the stormwater projects, in addition to possible grants, just an idea, a rough number of what we're talking about?
You know, if we did everything collectively, it's gigantic. I mean, it's like over 20 million. And so,
But that's in a 20-year.
yeah, so that,
Yeah.
like I said, we will piecemeal that as much as we can and bite off a piece at a time.
Sure.
And that's refreshing current infrastructure, not, because I know with new development, sometimes we can piggyback some of that cost on the development, but sometimes, what about, do we have any foreseeable areas of the city that, where there's some infill or there's a redevelopment where maybe someone might come in and help with that burden on existing infrastructure, similar to where we, retired the 2 lift stations and got the new lift station?
Correct. Yeah, with existing infrastructure, it's kind of hard because it's mostly through residential areas. As we get farther out to the lake, for example, that building that just got built there on, was it 1700 West?
1800.
1800 West. I haven't talked to Noah of what the requirements are gonna be to expanding that main ditch. So we're kind of waiting for development to kind of come to us and try to then work together and just share on the cost.
You guys give me my yearly reminder on our sales tax exporting. What's that percentage again?
It's about, so of our 1% local sales tax that we generate, that's generated in Lindon, we get 65% of that, 60 to 65.
And the census results, do you know when we might get those for any adjustment?
I don't, and I'm curious on that too, because I don't think our number is as high for that calculation, because it's that 50% based on population, and I'm like, I haven't seen it increasing enough for what I'm seeing going on out in Ivory.
Mike, have you heard anything new on
On the
census?
census, I have.
Okay, I haven't seen that either. So we're on some email lists, and so we get updates, but I haven't seen anything of late. So.
Last thing I saw in the news was they weren't gonna hit their normal times when they adjust in the past. So,
And that recalculation's done annually?
10 years.
Every 10 years, every
10
decade.
years, but they
Oh,
make,
this, on the sales tax.
On the
it's-
sales tax
it's-
percentage.
Yeah, here's the estimate.
the census is
They
every 10
update
years.
our,
Right.
yeah, they
Yes.
update our population, with the sales tax, once a year.
And is that because they're looking statewide, how they want to redistribute? Okay. So there's some other mathematical things at play, not just straight up bodies residing in our city with that, probably.
I don't know how they're estimating the population,
Percentage.
right?
Yeah, it's based off of the census numbers that, and then it goes through our regional council of governments. They provide input to the state as well on those. And so if we're seeing rapid growth in some city like Vineyard or Saratoga Springs or places like that, the local cogs are more in tune to those increases. And so they have submitted information for that sales tax base as well, so.
Okay, I get frustrated every year by that, and here I am, 7 years in, still frustrated.
Don't be happy, because they could take more.
Yep,
I know,
it comes
right?
up.
And they've tried.
Trying to do well every time. Were there any bills run up this year trying to mess with the tabulation again? There's been one every year, it
It was a
seems.
roundabout way, there was one, but I forget how it even looped into it.
Yeah, I don't think,
No, you got
this is
traction.
not the year.
Did the property tax one with the personal property.
Yeah, there was a change on personal property taxes, but they capped it, and so statewide, it was in the low millions.
Yeah, it wasn't a big
In
hit.
fact, it wasn't substantial, so. Should we move on?
Yep, let's do it.
Okay. We had a few items that council members had requested some discussion on. Randy, you had brought up the Christmas decorations last year, and then Van mentioned it again here recently in a meeting, and I know you've met with Heath. Do you guys want to talk about that?
Sure. As he gets set up here, I just want to give a lot of thanks for all the hard work for Heath and his staff. I reached out to Alan at Christmas time, at the beginning of December, who was able to go out and accumulate or acquire a bunch of photographs from municipalities around our area, and Heath will get us up to speed on all this, but I appreciate all the time that they've spent in bringing this presentation to us.
Thanks, Randy. We've met as a staff a couple of times. We've made some inquiries, excuse me, about what's best and what we want to do. Let me think here before I figure this out. Who am I? Where am I?
It's February 17th.
Council discussions, okay. We have learned one thing for sure. This stuff ain't free. So let me just bring up, I put this in just a PowerPoint format. Alan, due to his amazing way he likes to do things, he traveled around to almost every city in Utah County and some in the south part of Salt Lake County and looked at Christmas lights and what other cities have done. Then we as a staff made some calls and found out what they had paid. Let me just present, I'll just show you kind of what we've come up with, and I wanted to just show, if this will keep up with me, just a few pictures from other cities. We're just going to go this way. I don't know why this won't show some pictures, but we'll skip them. Alpine City had several. American Fork City, of course, you know what you've got with American Fork. They live nearby. I don't know why these won't display.
They're so pretty, too.
Because you want them to so bad.
They're so pretty.
Let me try one thing really quick without dragging this on. I think I saved this as a power or a PDF. I think yeah, I did. This will do it. Excuse me. Alpine City spent money on theirs. I thought that was a cute little thing that seemed to be simple in their pavilion. American Fork City, they have a couple of right-of-ways over State Street that have been there forever. You know, you've seen these, what they've done. You'll notice up in the top corner on the cities that responded to me, it showed me, they responded and gave me the initial startup costs and then their yearly budget. And if they contract their lights and stuff going up with an outside contractor, or they do it within the city staff, and when they start setting it up. So that's American Fork. Cedar Hills had a really cute thing right here at their sign. Eagle Mountain had just a cute idea on their little gazebo in their park. Highland City, Highland responded. They have $5,000 to $10,000 every year in their yearly budget to put their lights up and down. They must be in just various streets. Alan went to their city hall, and that's basically what they had there. Again, they contract that out with a company. Lehigh does not. Lehigh uses their parks and some of the public works individuals. They spend $10,000 to $20,000 to get it started, and they do $5,000 to $10,000 every year. And you can see when these lights are done like this, you can kind of tell it was as high as a ladder could go, and it's safe and a lot less expensive. But it depends on what the city wants to represent as well. I mean, they're quite a bit of money to get the contractors to come do them. We included these pictures because can lights do a pretty good job too. I mean, can lights make things look pretty good, and can lights are a lot cheaper, so I put our picture in.
Can you stop on that one? Although I told Heath, I said that on the previous one with Lehigh, it looks like either Italy or Cinco de Mayo for when you do it that way. So especially with that architecture.
Yeah, especially with the architecture, right? Lehigh did that, and then we've got some similar stuff going with us. Some of these bigger can lights, I'll show you, they really can make a difference. Now Mapleton is where everybody went down and saw, and we put this in to show you that these are all homemade. These are all just PVC pipe or wire and rope lights or string lights. Almost everything in Mapleton is done homemade. Their Happy Holidays wasn't on when Alan took the picture, but this is just a pole, and they just tear the lights off of it and run them down. They mostly do it with some contractor services, but this is PVC. So, you know, for what they did down there, you can see in the background these can lights. Really make some of these trees look really neat, and it doesn't cost near as much. More from Mapleton, and here's a can light that really does a great job. You can see it down here, it's big, they're big. They really broadcast the light up in the tree, but looks really pretty. Payson, this is down in Adams Country.
Do you have any pricing on, excuse me, what Mapleton was spending on
They
them?
did not respond to me, and the reason is they don't have a full-time Parks and Recreation director, and the parks guy is too busy out, I guess. He didn't respond. But still efforted, I could still find that out. What Payson did, and then what Pleasant Grove does, they're the same way. They did respond. They do it all with their staff, their park staff, but they start in September, and they go as high as a ladder, and they spend $5,000 to $10,000 a year, and that's just adding new stuff or replacing lights. Their startup was $30,000 to $40,000.
No wages in that, I mean, just, you're assuming,
That's just.
you're
yeah,
assuming they're getting their normal wage,
No
right?
time.
No time.
No time included. This is from my town. When I was working for Riverton, we bought a lot of these things. They've added this, and these are to be used every year. The reason they've spent so much, you can see that they spent $30,000 to $40,000, is they added dancing lights. These are all in the background, all pixel lights that dance, expensive. But that turned out really good. You walk around their park and you read part of the story, and they have a recording that reads it too. Kind of a clever idea. And just one park is all they decorate. Salem Pond, a lot of people understand Salem Pond, although almost as good as the Salem lights or the neighbor's lights. I think the neighbor puts a lot into that lives right there. $1,000 to $5,000 a year, Matt said, and the staff does all that. They also have what's the word I'm looking for? Permit to go over State Street. Santaquin even has some cute lights, but they don't spend more than $1,000. Staff does it. Randy and I talked about this. I don't know if that pavilion is not complete yet, or if they set it up for that. It'd be terrible in a snowstorm if you were having a little bit of a picnic, but it's clever what they did with it. Spanish Fork, they have, of course, an old permit to go across State Street. We have a permit, I'm sure you probably knew, we have an existing permit at the bottom of the hill, which means that we could enforce this if UDOT agreed to honor that, but I've got the form now to ask for that permit to be moved up here if we wanted to go that route. It has to be 24 feet above the ground, any kind of, and it has to have its own poles, own power supply, so it's kind of an efforted thing. Spanish Fork, of course, theirs is a money maker. He spent $100,000 on that and makes a lot more money than that. That's easy money for Spanish Fork with their.
You don't have any property we could do that on, something like that, do we?
You know, we thought as a staff, we really thought hard about a drive-through location. We even thought, brainstorming, maybe we'll just make people drive in our parking lot through the groups, you know, and we could do something fun and short, but I can't think of one, Jake. Unless we had a neighborhood buy-in or something that would get on board with that. But they spend $100,000 and their director down there, he says, I can break that down and send you the whole budget. Basically, that's what it is. And he says, as soon as they turn those lights on, the cars go clear out to the little acorn and down the street every night.
Further,
$1 a car.
I waited an hour and a half this last year to go, and my kids insist that we must go every year.
What is it?
And it's $7 a car.
$7
is what it is.
And it's more for a van and more
More
for a
for,
bus
yeah,
or
the
whatever.
bigger, but it's fun. It really is a fun little thing.
Brings the
It's a
spirit of
unique
Christmas in.
spot though, where it's a single entrance in and out, and you can't really see it from any public street, and
Yeah.
so it's,
They've got it trapped.
yeah.
Yeah, and they have a loop in the park, so it works. So it is unique.
Again, just some Spanish work. Springville is really cool all the way down the street. We thought that was really neat. All of their trees, right, almost out to the tips. And then even Vineyard bought pole lights and are trying to do stuff down there.
Yeah, we noticed that.
The Vineyard.
That road's so long and so wide that you can see them, but it doesn't make a real powerful statement or impact.
So this is what we did, and this is where it might get a little confusing. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but our planned campus location here is where Randy and our staff thought we might focus some on, including the hexagon pavilion out back of this building. Might be a neat little location. So this is what we did. We bid it out in several different ways. Try to stay with me. We figured that maybe, well, these are just price comparisons. If we did a green, yellow, and red, a phased entryway, the buildings with Christmas lights only, just LEDs, not anything special, $4,000 a year. The trees are, I'll show you another slide, but these big trees, if you use regular Christmas lights, are quite expensive. We figured you could afford they're about $1,000 a piece to light. Miscellaneous, another $4,000, $12,000 the first year, then an additional $12,000, and almost, yeah, $12,000 would be 26 year 3, and then 37 year after that, to get the whole campus covered.
Buildings and trees.
Buildings and trees. At least 12 of the big trees here. There is no power in the little trees here. There's tree there, there's a couple trees here that have power available. So it's called Plan A, but it's really just showing if we did everything in LED lights, it would cost us, if we had everything done, about $37,000 a year. So we decided to just look at buildings only. So we had several different ways bid. For Christmas lights only on the buildings, these are just LED strands you put at your house, but commercial grade. It'd be about $3,000 up and down for all 4 buildings.
So Heath, what about, there's a company now that you put the lights up and they're tiny, they're just tiny little LEDs, they don't draw attention, but you can change the colors for every single
Look
holiday.
right here.
So
That's
there's
the
not,
jellyfish
so you're not
column.
taking them off
Yeah.
and on.
That's what else we did. The jellyfish seems to be leading the band, and I don't know why. They all get them from the same place in China, literally, and they admit to that. The jellyfish seems to be leading the band with this. Trim lights, we had them come out and look. Trim light had a better warranty. They estimate they can go 5 to 10 years without anything major happening with a controller or something. But it'd be $12,000 for the city hall, and you get 10 years. They have 50,000 running hours on the equipment and 5 years free labor for $12,636. That's the building, whole building, on the eaves and everything. If they just do the front only, that's the price. Jellyfish was a little cheaper, but they've got a 1-year labor warranty and 3-year parts. Public safety, aquatic center, community center, probably in this order: City Hall, Public Safety, Community Center, Aquatic Center, if we did that year by year, but those are the prices. Quite expensive, but you get 10 years and they don't have to come down, and you can do it for multi-holidays, whatever you want, change the colored lights like you were talking about.
And Heath, the light pros that you're talking about were just the strand lights. That's the same company that does Orem City, correct?
This trim light.
Oh,
No,
trim,
yeah,
no,
Light
it's
Pros,
Light
yeah.
Pros.
Light
They
Pros
do
is the
Orem
same
City.
guy that does Orem City. And this was his price list for our trees. This is what Orem must be paying, unless they got a smoking deal. If you can see that, this pine tree is $4,200. That's just LED strand lights. So we figured, I've already got another bid from, our contractor would estimated that tree at $1,000. So this is what Orem's paying. I put that in there to show you, just how much money, and we're trying to be a lot more conservative than that, even in our estimations.
Do they have an initial cost for the lights, and then each year it put up, take down?
Yeah, what they have is two options, where they own the lights or you own the lights. And if you own the lights, they lease that to you, and I'll show you right here. This is a full estimate if we purchased everything from the Christmas Light Professionals. This is the whole Magilla. Labor and material, you can see that that's 56 large per year, everything. Okay, that's the whole Magilla. You can take and cut stuff, but if you lease it, it's only $47,000 to lease. I don't, these numbers are just way out of my mind, but this is where I got that $3,000 for just the buildings. Just to estimate to put Christmas lights on the buildings. So the bottom line is, talking with Randy and talking with the staff, we thought we would come to the council and maybe say, we would like in 2021, maybe $20,000 to $30,000 to start here at City Hall. Maybe we put trim lights in City Hall all the way around. We buy a couple of wreaths for the entryway, pre-lit wreaths. And then we want to bring power to the round pavilion and do a few trees. That's an estimate. And some decorations for the pavilion itself. That adds up to $30,000.
And Heath, can you speak to the reason why this committee decided that pavilion, that hexagon, is important?
Yeah, and two things along those lines, Randy. Thank you. The first thing is, I need lights out on that pavilion anyway. So maybe this can come from a different funding source like park tax, or I don't know if impact fees would qualify as a phase 2 of that new pavilion. But we've got a light pole really near that I've got Zach Daly, who's got a work request into the power company to see what it would cost to bring power to that. But we're looking for a center location that's a gathering spot where we can put Santa's mailbox in there. We had 340 letters to Santa this year. Some with central location with a few trees with can lights and then a few decorated. You can see it from State Street, although it's maybe not down the hill. Up the hill might be tough, but a central location where we could keep track of it, watch it, and keep the people there for photo opportunities. Kind of like they did in Mapleton a little bit.
Did you consider at all the park where we have that parking and, the Veterans Hall and some of that area where people are coming off of State Street and can park and walk through it all?
When we met the first time, when we were just brainstorming, and Randy was lucky enough, or we were lucky enough to have Randy join us for that meeting. We did glance over that. We did talk about it. The pavilion, some of those trees down there, there's power there already. But we didn't really focus much attention on it. But with the council's, direction, we certainly can.
It's so vast, though, that to really make it look good, you'd have to, I don't know that it would do it justice just to do a little bit of stuff up front.
You go along those front areas of trees
could,
and add to it, and it would look very similar to like a Mapleton one. I was really impressed with Mapleton's display.
That park looks so good, doesn't it?
It does. Lots of people go to it, take their kids, walk around. And so they get out of their car to go through it. And
Right.
so there's a lot to me down there that I think is very appealing.
You probably said this, Heath, but the banner across the State Street with 24 feet up, what, did you tell us what a cost on that would be?
No, I didn't, but I did check. I can't find anybody that's done it recently, but when I talked with the UDOT representative, he said that you'll need poles, and probably the best way to do it is have it engineered with its own poles and power. Not use an existing, he said, well, you can't use our poles, for sure, but I don't really even have a guess on that, Mike.
Okay.
The issue with this, the recommendation that we're making for this location, is the trim lights is a one-time cost, at least for 10 years, we hope. And so the only renewable and the power to the pavilion and trees would be a one-time cost, so maybe it's only 7,000 every year to, or not even that, really, just $5,000 to do the trees. And then adding to the next year, maybe we do the public safety building, and that's the price for the public safety building, and then a big 12-foot wreath we thought would look really good. And we can adjust this as we go. But Randy, council, I am really, this was our brainstorming activity, and we know that we all know and admit that's a lot of money to discuss. But we'll take your direction on whether we want to do that. We would like to see if we could get between $20,000 to $30,000 to kick this off and get a location established and get an identity for what we do for the holidays.
Can we use park tax for that? We can't, can we?
I reckon trees, you know, we could for the pavilion. That's obviously a parks facility that needs to be upgraded with electricity. I don't know if that would be, I don't know, it's for government buildings and facilities and their maintenance. So I don't know, Kristen, what you think. It'd be a stretch, probably.
Yeah, it might be helpful though, just to do a rough and tough and see how much we could.
Maybe these buildings, though, I mean, it's not for, unless Christmas is a program, holidays is a program, but the eve lights that we put on this building might be considered a facility upgrade. I don't know. I have to really think that over, talk to somebody.
The city center is not a park facility.
I park in front of it every day.
Government facilities and their maintenance, right? Not just, is it parks and recreation facilities and their maintenance?
It wouldn't take much to sort that out, would it?
Put basketball in here. So.
Or is it even worth,
Santa Tower.
is it even worth looking
We
at?
can look into it and see.
Okay.
But the bottom line is, if you use park tax money or if you use other money, I mean, the money's there. It's whether or not you want to make that appropriation and to what extent, you know? And to have not just a one-year plan, but, you know, if you're gonna jump into it, then you should do it in phases and do it that you're committed to it, I think.
I think what is unique about this year versus last year when I showed up with my really stinky vinyl banner that I think we had to have hazmat out here because it smelled so horrific, right, Heath?
It may or may not have survived when I took it out of here.
Yeah. That's back down in mothballs. We do have some in the base, down in the catacombs of underneath the community center. But Lindon needs an identity that is a little bit more noticeable. And we're growing vastly as, you know, I drove out to the project site for the development that was on our agenda tonight. And the loop I made going down 2nd South and then coming back up 700 North, you know, we've grown considerably since the first time I campaigned in 2011. And I just think that this would be a wonderful kickoff to our, the start of, as we're breaking ground this year and as construction goes for our new iconic building here on the east side. It'd be nice to have our city center and the public safety building, which is, you know, award-winning, beautiful building, to have, whether we do at the public safety this year, but whatever phase we could talk about, to have some identity here. And I wish that we could all take the time to go through all of Alan's beautiful photographs. He has probably 100 of them, doesn't he?
At least.
Yeah, and it was fun to see all the cities have some sort of identity. And you drive past through Lindon, we don't have one as it comes to the Christmas celebration. And the nice thing about these lights that have been priced out is that we can use them for a lot of different events, whether we just want to add a little sparkle to the city and put some white lights on, but we can always do a colored version for something else. When we get to the point, when and if, that we do it on the aquatic center, we can do it for a party that for companies, their colors, for a private party that night. I can see, like, if doTERRA had it, we could do it in some of their colors. And it'd just be a nice little homage to those who are coming to do things. So we can have some fun with it other than just at the holidays. I lean towards the more semi-permanent lights that would be installed, for lack of a better term, the jellyfish lights, but
Right,
Um,
Lindon Days, we
yeah.
could be promoting.
there's lots of, I know at my house, we're big on the bistro lighting, and we call them our party lights. In fact, our Christmas lights are always white, so we can turn them on if we ever choose to. So I just think that the ability to have flexibility on these city lights, if we choose to do that, would be wonderful. I know that the discussion, though we've seen lots of really high numbers on this. I know that the sentiment is to do it beautifully, tastefully, but conservatively as possible, and something that has longevity, not just, penny wise and pound foolish kind of an attitude. And also thinking about sponsorships. I know up in Midway, they've got the cutest little signs that go under trees that are sponsored. So looking for opportunities to find their funding mechanisms is something that would be big on this project, if possible.
So, maybe we'll throw that on there and see if it sticks then, if we're okay with that. I mean, we'll do whatever you want, $5 or 50,000. We can we'll do our best and we'll make it beautiful. That's it on that.
$5 or 50,000, boy, that's kind
That's a
of a.
range.
I'm versatile, baby.
One
The
strand of
flashlight
lights.
with a cover covering on it for the fire.
So Heath, any mention of vandalism or any concern from that part? I'm not saying there would be, I'm just curious if.
I had a lot of cities that are not Utah County respond to my query, and one of the most interesting ones was it was just Ogden, and when Ogden responded, he said he gets vandalized every year.
Yeah.
But not as much, you'd imagine some of those places he has it. He's been doing it for 25 or 30 years. He still spends $100,000 a year with no revenue stream. And it's a big city, we know that, but he said that it's not enough to really get him shied back. Yeah. Once in a while, somebody will cut a line to a tree or something like that, but I didn't hear any other thing besides that.
I was kind of curious with the tree just there on, is it Johansson or
Jacobson's,
Jacobson?
I think it.
What happened?
I think it died, and I think that's why they
They
decorated this
okay,
year,
all right.
because it was gonna come down.
Okay.
Yeah, the story of Lindon's first tree lighting is really a tremendous story. It would be nice, you just mentioned Riverton has the storybook. That'd be really neat to teach that history.
So is there a dollar range?
I'd say for right now, let's throw in 30, it's in pencil, we'll see how the budget goes, and it could come back out, or could be adjusted, and then we try to figure out if it stays, and then what we can do with it to get the best bang.
I'm all right with that. Yeah, I'm okay with that. No guarantees, but
Right, I mean, this will come up again in the budget, so this is just very high level.
I think I'm comfortable, yeah, like they said, no guarantees, but throwing that out there, I really would love to find one of those revenue producing Spanish Fork type of deals. I thought I jogged on the trail by Utah Lake. We have that 3 acres that we split off that has a road on part of it. If you put on the rest, I don't know, just always keep your eye open for that. I really would be open and amenable to that. I just think driving down to Spanish Fork, I think there's a lot of people right here that if you had something similar to what Spanish Fork had, you could really, and I don't want it for the money-making aspect of it. I think we could probably turn a profit on it, but it sure would be nice to have something cool like that. And I don't know if any of our parks have, they have some trails. It seems like what you drive through in Spanish Fork is almost a trail. It's not very wide. If there was a way to do a loop. Anyways, keep your eye out for that, because I'd be
than that, when I ran the equestrian park in Salt Lake County, it was in the parking lot.
Yeah.
And it was a company, but they had set up literally a back and forth through the parking lot, but it was amazing, right? And they charged revenue there because the equestrian park is fenced.
We got a spot.
So no
for it.
cheaters, right? But it can be that easy, and they made a lot of money. We just charged them rent, but it can be possible.
What about the road up to Dry Canyon? Is that city road? It's Forest Service, okay.
So free use.
If it's open, but right now they gate it because they don't want
Right.
liability and maintenance.
That's an asset I feel like we could take a little more advantage of that we have in our city. I mean, we have Dry Canyon, which is a really cool canyon. Tons of people go there, and maybe we can take better ownership of it somehow.
I
And
think what I'm hearing Jake say is it'd be nice to really make Lindon more of a placemaker, have some identifiable kind of tourism
Yeah.
destination type
That'd be lovely.
activities. And that certainly could play into it.
And I do like what you bring up about the lake property, if there's a way to utilize that, because
yeah,
it's
could make a loop
a
somehow.
loop somehow in there, and
And Vineyard's
use that
gonna build-
revenue to offset what we do up here on the camp.
Yeah.
No, if it's done right, it can be a walk-in, it doesn't need to be a drive-in, right?
Just cold.
Ooh, I don't wanna get out of my car.
Although Luminaria at Thanksgiving Point
Is that
sells
a
out,
walk?
it's a walk, it sells out every year.
Okay, let's keep moving. I just got the,
We've
my
got a
wife
lot-
usually
we've got a
kicks me
lot of
under the
other
table,
things,
but
so-
Adam just,
I'm cracking the whip.
yeah.
That's
it's time to
That's
move
good.
forward. So we have a placeholder, we
Thank you,
have more
everybody.
discussion on it, that's a good step.
Thank
Okay.
you, thank you.
Entryway signs.
Yeah, I
Did
just
you
had,
wanna talk about
I'm
that?
confident that that's been discussed many, many times. My thought was, as I was driving up Locust, headed back towards Lindon Way, we have a sign that's really, really teeny in several places around the city. You'd be hard pressed if you weren't looking to know that you're coming into Lindon. And then we have the one on 200, 2000. Yeah, the brick one, that's a nice one. Adam was kind enough to send me some bids that he got back in 2016 for either a triangular shaped or a straight one that had a reader board on it, did it not?
That was one that we were considering out here in front of the city center.
Yeah, electronic reader board. So I bring it up only, I mean, if it's something that's just been absolutely no way poo-pooed, if you will, but I think, you know, what comes to my mind is 7th North. Eventually, maybe, something along those lines, but I just feel like if we're gonna brand the city, if we're gonna do a better job of saying, hey, look who we are and what we do, there's so many things we can put on a reader board to help inform, you know, not only the electronic stuff that we do, but I thought I would bring it up.
Signups for the recreation
Sign
programs.
up, yeah, exactly.
Events are coming.
Yes.
Holy Cow Boutique.
Do you want us to dig that reader board one out
I-
here again?
Well,
Was that
I would,
electronic one? That was
That was the
Yeah,
electronic
small.
one. I recall Matt Bean was really opposed to the electronic sign for whatever reason, but I don't know if he was just a stronger voice that night or if there was more feelings about that. But
I don't know what the
Well, did
technology
we
has
buy a
changed.
smaller one that's just in storage now? We never bought it. We talked, okay,
We talked about one for the community center. It was a piece
yes.
that was
Yeah, it
fabricated.
was a lot cheaper because it was modular. It had a digital board in it, but it was like full brick. And it wasn't, you know, it was on poles, but you could actually move it if you needed to.
Have you ever seen the corner when you're going into American Fork on Utah County Boulevard? You get to the top of the hill, you've got the Tippinogus Temple on the left, and you have American Heritage School, private school on the right. They have a nice brick encased reader board right there in that corner.
Is that the school that has
The
that?
school owns it.
Yeah, it is nice.
It is nice.
So,
I just thought, I just thought it might be time to reconsider that and,
Okay.
I'm open
for
to it.
purposes of tonight, direction to pursue entryway signs more, is
That'll
that?
get us some information,
Okay.
costs.
Disseminating information, having identifiable, I mean, so many people say, where's Lindon now?
Yep.
And I'm like, okay, you can hold your breath for the whole 30 seconds it takes to go.
I always tell them,
across.
I'm not gonna tell you, we don't want you to come. So,
Yeah.
Just so,
and I have one more thing to do.
as you consider though, reader boards, I do get a lot of businesses that want those too, and so.
Then
Yeah, if
it's
the city does it, you've opened it up for everybody else.
Is it the legislature we might be facing that?
With
That's the
bill,
billboard.
with billboards.
That's the billboards.
Yeah, it's,
Existing signs,
That's the
yeah.
CC one.
I'm not well, it's gonna be a battle. I'm not sure how that's gonna end up. The
Right,
league's
that's
come out
what you
against
love
it and.
I want
We'll explore that
Well,
more.
if you wouldn't
Did
mind
have
doing some
something else?
research.
Yep, we will.
That'd be great. And then I've mentioned a time or two in our council meetings, I finally got some numbers on this. There's two different systems. There's Recollect or Recycle Coach on this recycling software. It does all sorts of things. It sends out messages reminding them when it does, what you can put in there, where you can take your stuff. It's just all kinds of interesting things. For the Recollect, I was quite surprised. The total cost per year is $14,880. And based on the number of municipal solid waste users in the city, and I also gave them the number of recycle people too, our share of that would be $589 for that software.
So it just sends a message to residents?
And that's the other question I had. You know, being as little of cost as it is, I don't know, do we want to take the time to have Neil Schwindeman come down and give us a brief presentation on what it'll do and how it'll do it?
I think Orem City is using some.
They are, for sure.
Recycle Coach.
Yeah, Bryn Bybee is really,
We have a recycling can, I have no idea about that.
Okay. I've seen some social media posts about Recycle Coach, and so,
yeah.
but you know what, if you have any contact info, if you'll email that to me, and we'll run with it and get you some more information.
Recycle Coach is a little bit higher. It's gonna be somewhere around $1,000, $1,100 a year. But also the district is, we're seriously considering funding some of that, of the software and then decreasing the cost to the cities. So it's such a small amount, I don't know if it even rises to the level of a budget item. Maybe it could be a line item in one of the public works things or whatever. But I think it's worth it. I think it's worth it to look at it and consider it.
We'll at least get some more information and costs.
See what it does and how effective it is.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Okay, I will,
When is Lindon's 100th anniversary? Is it 24?
2024.
You know, maybe that's a target, not that we have to wait that long, but maybe that's a target for monument signs or something that we could do in celebration of our 100th anniversary.
So preparation
Yeah.
leading up to perhaps in
And maybe we budget accordingly to create whatever image we want to have. That'd be a good time to really surround.
probably so, but I still would like to see some of those teeny tiny little placard signs. If we could even do something to beef those up. I don't know if there is or isn't, but I know we don't want some huge behemoth coming in from Pleasant Grove to Lindon, but I think there's a number of places that we could beef up.
So not to lessen your comment, but when people come to Lindon, they know they're there because of our road. Just enough said. I mean, it's true.
Smooth.
Mayor Fugel goes, "What are you doing this to me for?" You know.
But what's
Especially
amazing
on
to me
Locust.
is how many people finish it with a caveat, but it's not like Pleasant Groves. There's a lot of people say that. Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Horse Arena, Carolyn, you had.
Yes, I'm going to turn the time over to Heath. So as you all know, we, with council approval, we've had a committee meeting periodically. I think we've had 3-4 meetings so far. The end goal is, you know, what can we do to not only continue to foster, you know, the uniqueness of our animal rights here in Lindon, but potentially look beyond that for an arena that is maintained in a way that could be used for other purposes as well, not just horses. And so the committee has found some pretty good findings, and at this point, we're not planning to present any sort of a formal large plan, but we're thinking of taking more of a staged approach of identifying what are investments that could be made that would have a long-lasting effect, things that could be repurposed and used if future arena changes were made. So I'll turn that over to
Thanks, Carolyn.
him.
We had quite a few people participate on the committee. Probably recognize some of these names. They're all very vested in horses. When this came about, I had nearly 70 emails about support for something to be mentioned in the Parks and Rec Master Plan with regards to the horse arena. So they're involved. This is what the discussion really came down to. If we came for the day and we had all kinds of money, they wanted to move the arena to the center of the park and have it indoor, maybe in this kind of a scope, an indoor, just covered arena. I show you that because that's what everybody wants, but we decided that maybe a phase plan would be better. So, the concerns that the residents and the users had was about 3 or 4-fold. Number one was we want a place to ride in the winter. Number two, was certainly right after that was safety of the animals and the riders. So we figured that in phase one, we would maybe get some current items, some items that could be reused again. For ground preparation, we wanted to have a company go in there and regrade the arena and refix the sprinklers and maybe even put a fabric down. Maybe a $20,000 investment there. I don't know, Phil, you probably with your construction background know if that's a pipe dream or not. I haven't talked with anybody about it, but we do know that the surfacing, if we pay for it, is gonna be about $17,000. However, Phil thinks he's got some good surfacing for us that might be free or greatly lessened by that. But we wanted to put a number in there of 20,000, and then they requested new, higher quality arena equipment. A lot of people like the Black Widow arena groomer. It's a little bit more than the others, but.
It's sort of like a Zamboni for a horse.
It is.
For a horse arena.
And you can adjust it for, if you're good at it and you've got good water, you can adjust it for different types of events too, barrels or roping or whatever. And then we have a need in the city, again, maybe a different revenue stream to get a new tractor and maybe surplus two of our other two older tractors that both Public Works and Parks could use. And we're looking at between $40,000 and $60,000. All of these things are big investments that could help us with our current arena, a new surfacing, some exploration of the ground, new surfacing, and some new equipment.
How often would that tractor be used, would you project?
Well, I use it twice a week for about an hour. When we do weeds, we have two tractors. One has a tractor, well, they're both ones. I have a little Massey, and then he has the bigger Massey that they use for weeds. We use it for weed abatement with mowers.
In 1966 and
Yeah.
1970s.
It's pretty close to that.
Yeah.
I mean, just, we ever look at renting them?
Installation as well.
Do we ever look at renting them from like Ace Rents or something?
I do rent, one of the things with this tractor is it could come with forks. I rent a forklift a lot to unload pallets and trucks and move trees and stuff like that. And they're only about, what, $180 for 4 hours, $160 for 4 hours. I use it forklift for the pool a lot, raising up and down and lifting pumps and moving pumps. So the payback on this versus renting is probably not very equal. You probably still rent what we need, but we would need something with at least 70 horsepower to do the work that we need. And these two other tractors.
Public Works has one very similar to that. Is there ability to use their machine?
Well, that's the tractor we're talking about, the 1969 Massey. And it's, the clutch is
But
going
it
out.
doesn't look like that. I mean, we have a front end loader that looks like that photo.
Backhoe.
Yeah,
The backhoe.
sorry, not a front end loader. What,
Well, we have a front end
Is that
loader,
weird?
but it's what we load the salt with. It's
The big loader.
a 3.5 yard.
don't we have a piece of equipment that looks almost like that orange tractor right there? At Public Works?
Just the backhoe. But it's about similar to that.
How is the backhoe not able to do the work that you need?
It would pull, I mean, you could hook something up to pull it in the arena.
You
It
don't
does
have-
have quick connect forks, we could get forks for that bucket,
Yeah.
but it's kind of a different animal, I think.
We don't have the power takeoff in the back or be able to pull an implement because of the back, the actual.
Lifting bars in a PTO.
Right.
You don't have that on a backhoe or a loader.
Okay.
Farm equipment, yeah, it's completely different type of equipment.
Now, we can also get one of these tractors that has the mower that we can actually do from the side, and we can actually maintain the ditches better, easier, instead of the mini excavator with that flailer. And we have to go very slow. You can just go with the tractor and do shoulder
A lot
mowing.
safer,
What's that?
a lot safer.
A lot safer
Than
too.
what you're doing currently.
Right.
Okay, thanks. I'm just trying to understand.
This is a piece that really neither of us have to use this kind of situation. So that's what the arena group kind of wanted to lead out with. All this stuff could move into maybe a second phase is, most of them, well, all of them wanted to move the arena from its current location to the baseball fields. That's a whole nother ballgame that we need to talk about. We're not prepared to talk about that. Any kind of study on enlarging it. They want a 300-foot by 150-foot standard arena size. Right now, we're about 100 feet by 275 feet. So we're limited in what horse events can happen. So I bring to you what they were hoping to bring to the council.
And it really would be about opening the space for other possibilities. So we'll present kind of like some models and some of the other activities and groups and things that could happen there. You know, some of the other reasons too, if you notice in the arena right now, there's a skinny little driveway to access it, and you have to go along the side and then park in the back, and it's just awkward and maybe not, you know, just making the access make more sense as well. And one of the things that was brought up, you know, Jake mentioned, oh, where could we do our own version of Festival of Lights? You know, maybe you had the City Center Park parking lot. One suggestion, I don't know if this would fly, but have a little drive from the City Center parking lot across to the new parking lot where the arena parking is. You know, there would be potentially a loop in there. Anyway, there's a lot to flesh out still, but for now, we just wanted to approach the items that were useful and practical. And for example, the surfacing material, if another arena down the road, the council decided, yeah, let's go for this and get some grants written up and just figure out what makes sense, that material could be reused and moved. So nothing would go to waste.
Can I speak to that Black Widow? I just came from, spent 5 days down at Westworld down in Prescott, Arizona. They've got multiple horse arenas, and watching that Black Widow work just was wonderful. I mean, it's a beautiful piece of machinery as they worked on multiple.
Right here in Redmond, Utah, right where the salt mine is.
Yep. Yep. They had one down there. And they're indoor, and then they have an indoor, a covered arena, and then multiple outdoor arenas as well, so.
Oh, I'd like one point of clarification. If I'm understanding it correctly, this new equipment, all the surfacing would be in anticipation of expanding the arena?
Not
Be able to be
necessarily. I
used
mean,
if,
we're
Yes, that's
saying
my
this,
point, I
this
think.
money would be practical if we left it as it is, because this is what's needed to maintain
what we
and not let it become dilapidated. You know, a lot of the users right now say the material on the ground is not really appropriate for the activities and for the horses. There's issues with that. So
what are we using now to,
just the natural clay, sand.
well, no, I know, but I mean to groom it and to get it,
The Zamboni.
yeah.
We have an older and still functional harrow that we use, and that little Massey
Chain link
tractor.
fence.
And it's an implement for arenas. It's a little older, but it still works fine. It's just a harrow, it just scratches the ground.
So we could get by, but a lot of this would
They've
be,
been getting by
would
for
be
many
in,
years.
would be in anticipation of perhaps an expansion.
The stuff that we're proposing to get could be used in the future if we changed. you know.
And by other departments.
Okay.
potentially.
So let's ask the question. Ideally, the committee would like to relocate and expand. I mean, ideally, that's what they would like to see happen.
That is the
Yeah.
proposal that will probably be coming later this year.
Okay.
That's once everything's fleshed out. And there will be flexibility within that, what that could look like and how it could be funded. One thing that Heath, did you have any information about what you're asking for today? What budgetary bucket it would come from as far as park tax? Are we, you know?
Oh, I remember we talked about that, and I hadn't given that much thought today. I'll have to come back with something
So
about
we have
that.
a robust park tax
Yeah.
funds to use. We'll try to use those, apply those where we can.
Right.
Whatever's-
I think conceptually is to, the committee come up with a tiered plan and the full plan, and then allow the council with some community feedback to determine at what level is their comfort to fund that. But I think it's important that you have a complete plan of where you want to end up, because I think sometimes if they can envision that, these other steps are easier to take and buy-in to the overall process. One word of caution, if Orem is any indication of what maybe might happen in Lindon, when they were doing the event hall or whatever it was, the word got out that they were gonna replace the baseball fields and put it there, and it was just total all-out war.
I mean, Provo?
Orem.
Right
Orem.
behind the city center.
I'm not saying that's the case here in Lindon, but it
Very
was,
protective of that.
it got ugly. So,
I can imagine.
so come up with a concept of, you know, if you're gonna replace the baseball fields, are we creating other opportunities for those baseball fields to still exist, or do we need to have them exist? I don't know.
But you're just talking one of the fields, not both of the fields. correct?
Yeah, as it sits now, it would be the west or the east field.
And Pheasant Brook Park has good fields.
I'm just
and-
saying,
yeah.
make sure you talk that through and come up with some alternatives or plans. I think it'd be helpful.
Yeah, Heath has sketched out some really good stuff, it's just not fleshed out to present yet, and we'll
Okay.
consider that.
How tall was that gonna be?
We're approaching
How
this
tall?
basically like potentially a three-stage approach over time,
I don't remember. When
so.
I built that one, I don't remember.
Are we ready to move on to 700 North?
As we're leaving that, those dimensions, a 30-foot pre-engineered metal building. We've been pricing out one for some warehouse space that would hit probably 3.6 million.
Yeah, my estimate from the local builder was a little bit lower than that, but
But
it's
this
pretty
would,
expensive.
this one was with concrete floor and that we wouldn't necessarily need there, but so, it's a big number.
Yeah,
The taller you go, the larger the span, the price just
Yeah, I
goes
think-
up.
Just saying, the one I just saw in Prescott, the outside, but similar to this, they're done similar to, they just put the footings for the metal arches, and then they put the hard tarps over the top, and I mean, they're very durable, but it's a very high inside, but it's very, it's very low profile. They're very, very attractive when they're done that way. And
multi-use too, we'd like to be able to do concerts in there, you know, that's the
It
future.
would be a multi-purpose use. You can lay down a floor, you can have bridal fairs, you could have Holy Cow over there, you could have the car show, have covered space, it's all kinds of things. And, you know, one of the things that Heath and I are talking about is how do we get Lindon a little more on the map? We don't really have every city has what makes them kind of in people's minds, what they're remembered for, or a tourism draw or a regional draw of some kind. And, you know, the animal rights are disappearing as there's infill, but Lindon has this wonderful embracing of animals in the zoning we have here that allows that. And so there's many people from other places that are seeing locations to do this and have it done. It would be a draw potentially too, so anyway.
Okay, we ready to move on to 700 North? Is that good? Okay.
All right, so we just wanted, Carolyn asked for this item to be put on, we wanted to talk about 700 North real quick and future planning as we're kind of finishing up or coming close to the end of our development agreement for the 700 North property with Ivory. That expires in June, so wanted to get some feedback from you on a few items. So if you remember, we've got that in that development agreement, that 8.2 acres that, you know, Ivory's supposed to work with us on a commercial development to go in there if one comes in. So wanted to talk about that real quick. So this is the plan if something happens in the next 4 months on that commercial property. Alternative plan would, Ivory would be putting single-family homes in that 8 acres. The other thing we've talked about with our 700 North master plan is a plaza area. So the 700 North plan shows a plaza area just off of 700 North on the south side. I just put in a few photos of plaza areas I've seen that work well in commercial areas. This is one in Aurora, Colorado that I visited. This one's just a small one. It's 1 acre, but it's a very nice a little open space area. You can see it on this aerial, this aerial photo right here. In the wintertime, they put an ice skating rink in there, and got restaurants on both sides. And you're probably familiar with the one on the left. That's at the gateway. It's about an acre as well. So kind of just those two talking points. What do we want to do on the deeper portion of the 700 North property with Ivory? And do you want to look at some type of plaza area right now? I gave you the cost on the north side of 700 North. That's on the market. Broke that down. They're asking $19 million for it, for that 37 acres. That breaks down to about $514,000 an acre for property is what it's going for down there. So
And how big is the piece that goes back to Ivory?
it's 8 acres.
4 million.
Up to this point, haven't had recent conversations with Andersons, but their price in the past was less than what the group on the north was trying to get. Mike and I have talked about this extensively, and we were looking at, okay, the vision of this entire document that IBI we've engaged with is what do we want as an identifiable city downtown gateway iconic placemaker, and can we do that within the 500 feet right now that's going to stay commercial? And we were looking at different downtown things and kind of placing them on top of it, and that 500 feet is really tough. Some of the developers I've talked with, let's say you wanted a movie theater as your centerpiece, and we kind of planted one in there, and it just didn't look like it was going to give us the room that we need to really create that type of a placemaker space. And talking about how do we go about this, I know initially if all things had gone wonderfully and COVID hadn't happened, it was, could we bring a development partner? There's really, 3 ways you slice and dice, skin the cat to get a city center. One is you have a development partner, you get some trade-offs going back and forth, and that just hasn't happened. We had hoped to go to the national show last year, retailer show, and talk to some folks. We had one developer at one point showed some interest, but things kind of waned, and we've had meetings with other developers. And they said, what really would be helpful is if the city, when we see a city lead out and a city makes an investment, a lot of times that's the catalyst to get something going. And so I was looking into what is the track record. And so, for example, Bountiful decided to invest in their town square, which finished not too long ago. They decided to do it on existing land they already owned, but they invested $3.5 million, and that includes an adorable little historic part of their downtown, has an ice skating rink in the winter. Farmington spent $9.2 million on what they wanted to conceive as a downtown identifiable gathering place. Ogden spent $35 million, and they did a huge redevelopment of some older, dilapidated areas. Mill Creek has a really nice, kind of smallish city center. Probably not a whole lot different size-wise than what we would be conceiving of here. And they did a $20 million bond. And that included purchasing the land. They did not have land existing to work with. West Jordan also, in 2014, kicked off, their concept for. So this idea of creating a downtown space, it's not unusual for cities to take the initiative and proactively kickstart it, and then furthering down that, Ogden, their $35 million, they anticipate they've had close to $200 million come after their $35 million in development from outside dollars. So that's typical. You either land a big whale that then attracts everything, or the city creates the space and then everybody wants to go there. And you have tremendous development happen, just kicking it off. So that's the question. We are at our deadline, and Ivory will come to us and just want to fill that space with houses and the opportunity to have that land. We're kind of at the...
What's the date again?
It's
Sorry.
this year, June.
I did just run the numbers real quick on the RDA. So over the next till 2037. The RDA brings in about 6.1 million. The portions of that is 1.78 to Utah County if they participate, 3.29 to Lindon City, 1 million from the water conservancy districts. So I mean, that money you don't have, right now our current fund balance is just over 200,000. So we don't have a ton in the RDA yet. But even over the 20 years, you can kind of see what we can expect.
Doesn't Ivory already own a piece of that?
Yes, they did close on a little sliver of it, so they have kind of their toe in the water. I don't know
That's something.
when they're gonna pull the trigger to acquire the rest of it.
Right, and that's something, Ivory probably wouldn't just sell it for what they're buying for. You're probably gonna have to look at, what profit they would make
Opportunity cost, yeah.
as well.
Carolyn, you're asking tonight if there's interest to pursue purchase of property.
Purchase of property, just because it's gonna go this year to Ivory if we don't show interest or make
Give us
moves.
some direction, yes or no?
And I would be proposing
Yeah, it's a big deal, right?
not the commercial in front, because that's zoned commercial, it's that 8.2 acre. And so I don't know if any of you, Mike, can you pull up the IBI proposal where we kind of have a city center, town center, and we have basically a Main Street promenade concept
Yeah, that's
going through
kinda
there and
this-
how the flow would look.
Yeah, sorry, that's fuzzy, but that's kind of this concept. This road here would be your Main Street. This is 700 North, this is Anderson Boulevard coming into the development. I didn't include.
You don't have the aerial of the whole space?
No, I don't have access to
Okay.
it.
How much acreage are you suggesting, Carolyn?
Well, I think the acreage that's key right now to decide if there's an interest is that 8.2 acre nugget that gives us that depth to work with. Part or all, I don't know what the,
It's about 4,220,000 for the 8.2 acres.
Kristen, I've got a couple questions. Can we bond against those CDA revenues? We
Future
can,
revenues,
we
yes.
could. What happens in a scenario where we were to buy it for 4.2 million and hold it as a placeholder, and 2 years from now, Center Cal comes to us, we love Center Cal's idea, we sell it to them for 6 million. Do we pay capital gains on that? How does that work? Or where we're a nonprofit, we just profit it, and so we could look at it as an investment?
But Carolyn's intent is to gift it to somebody as an incentive for them to locate here.
not
Not
necessarily.
But
I
that,
mean-
but that's what you're talking about, is an incentive. We buy the property and
Well-
we either gift it or we give it to them at a extremely
There's
low
different
rate.
ways that you negotiate that process and until we have a player. So we could just build the plaza and the city center and then just have private parties come in because we've made that initial investment. Or sometimes you have a partner that says, like Ivory said, we'll build your park in exchange for some things. What that would look like down the road would give us the power to choose how we proceed and execute the plan.
I just didn't perceive your concept in any way a revenue opportunity like Jake just mentioned.
It could be. There's multiple ways to accomplish the goal. There's not any one way to do that. But at this point, my concern is, once the land is gone, the opportunity is gone.
We don't even know if Ivory would sell it to us, frankly. I mean, we haven't asked that question.
So we'd be buying it, a portion from Ivory, person from the Anderson family, right?
To get all the way to 700 North, yes.
No, for the 8 acres she's talking about, the 8 acres that's in question coming June.
Oh, my understanding is on that eight point something acres, Ivory has first right of
Something that
refusal.
impedes
Purchase.
That's what I was gonna say, they'll probably buy enough money.
So we'd be buying the 8 acres from,
in competition with them.
They'd be buying it from Ivory because they have the first option. They're not gonna
Yeah.
forego that option.
Probably at a
Do they have an
premium
option
from
on the whole
Ivory.
piece then, or just a portion of it? On the whole piece?
I don't know.
What I understood in past discussions.
Agreement
it the
was,
whole
you know, if a commercial option came first, they would acquiesce to a commercial option. And so we could say this is critical Lindon City
Yeah,
acquisition.
they did always say that.
Think about it from the perspective of the citizens of the community. Is, you know, would they buy into this concept? Would they rather see an arena? Would they rather, you know, I don't know, just of all the possibilities, how does this fit in on how we would spend our money or invest? And I'm not saying it's pros or cons, but look at the bigger picture and try to see how that fits in with where we are and
Oh, I like how Jake approached this as far as a potential through a bond and the way you couch that, because I've always been very pro acquiring this. I guess I'm more hesitant than I have before, not because of so much the climate we're in, but I guess the potential to do something great with the city park and the arena is something that perhaps the citizens would find more value in than what we're doing, but given the way it's been.
We can't use that money out there for something else though, somewhere.
I'm not saying one of it, I'm just saying that if optically, what the citizens might like, what they might want to have us focus our attention on.
I think that we need to gather information on this either way with it coming due in June.
I don't want to, can't go by without more.
I'd like to have us look at it. I think it'd be wise as a council to look at it and make sure we're making the right decision. I don't know that us building a downtown center is the catalyst that finally makes 700 North take off. It might be a part of that. 700 North has always had its limitations, starting with the 500-foot setback rather than the 800-foot, which is unfortunate back in the day that we didn't get the full 800 along the length of it. But I do think, frankly, I'm bullish on commercial real estate in Lindon. I think eventually that will go, something will happen there. And so for us to invest and hold it as a placeholder, I don't know that I'm ready to invest to the point of developing it into a city center, but if we could, I mean, in a best case scenario that we were to put a bond in place and hold it for 2 years and a center cal came in and built what they had originally planned, I think that would be a win. I think that would be a home run. But I do think there's a lot of ifs. I mean, who knows?
Yeah, an update on Center Cal is, I've shared this with Mike. So their Riverton project has expanded and become a larger, more acreage than the initial concept. And so they are now looking at that trajectory, grand opening 2022. There was a little bit of a delay with COVID. Financially, they actually said they weathered COVID quite well. But their strategy is they always kind of fill a project in a particular region before they start the next. So they, I shared with you all, you know, their CEO did say, hey, we're ready to start looking again at what might be next in Utah and start looking at those deals, but they're a lean organization. All hands are on deck with Riverton and the Utah market, and then also their Meridian project is very busy right now, and that's their Intermountain West division. So timing-wise, it's just for them, the timing isn't there yet to go in and make acquisitions just yet, but it's still a possibility. It's still on their radar. So that's where either we pull the trigger and hold something, or we say, okay, doesn't matter, we'll just work with the 500 feet. because, you know, the nature of the economy and everything has put a pause on a lot of, you know, retail development or for now.
I'm not opposed to the concept, but what I am struggling with is just betting on the come that, you know, we spend $4.5, $5 million just betting on the come that someone's gonna come in and buy that from us or take that over. I mean, if that happens in 3, 4, 5 years.
15, who knows? Yeah.
Yeah, we're making an awful lot of.
The big bet.
Yeah.
A lot of debt
We're paying
service.
an awful lot of debt service on that. Again, I'm not opposed to the concept. It's just, if we had a bird in the hand, or even a bird that was looking our way real seriously, might be a different story. But, you know, I'm kind of with what the mayor said. I think there are other things and other places. I mean, I love the 701 project. It's a great project, and it ultimately will be a great project. But with what we just read today in the article and everything else I've been able to read, it's going to take a while for retail to bounce back. And if we're not really that willing to look at the possibilities of housing in that area, it really severely limits what options we have. I mean, if you think about it, we really have retail, we have office, professional office, or dare I say it, nice office flex space, and residential, and I'm sure we can all work that balance out. I'm not suggesting we can't, but I just don't know that the citizens, you know, I think we could come to them and say, yes, if we want to do this, we've got somebody that's ready to go in and ready to do it. That would be a different story, but I'm just not sure what kind of reception that would receive.
I would like to explore it more before the time, you know, between
Yeah.
here and the time that
You
it
better get
elapses.
after it. 4 months is not very long, so.
Well, that's partly, you know, the whole 700 North, and I agree with a lot with what you're saying, Mike, and I think in the process we've been going through with IDI is this corridor will be a mixed-use concept. It's not gonna be just commercial zoning in the sense that we've had traditionally in Lindon. There's housing players potentially considered here, so the whole mixed-use idea to have a vibe. What we really need in Lindon is, yes, flex is hot right now, but everything's cyclical, so we don't wanna have all our eggs in one basket and just say, this is only office, this is only flex, this is only brick and mortar retail. We need to have a healthy economic ecosystem, live, work, play concept, there's all those elements.
So Adam and I could reach out to Chris and even, you know, just to see what the climate is, to, you know, and we can report back from there. One thing, you know, to keep in mind is, you know, it doesn't matter if it's a Center Cal or a Boyer or a Woodbury, they're all going to want an incentive. You know, the incentive in Riverton was $18 million or right around there.
Right.
You know, your whole RDA without school district participation only creates $6 million. And, you know, even if you buy property.
Riverton was an 80-acre scope though, so.
But I'm just saying,
adjust it
everybody's gonna want an incentive, like,
Yeah.
you know, when I was with South Salt Lake, we went in and bought the property for the Winco. We paid $2 million for it, but then we gave them the land because we made that back up in sales tax in 5 years. And so, they all want, any of these big players, they all want some sort of incentive. If you bond against that $6 million, you know, just for this property, that may leave you out of being able to attract someone else on the other sections of the property too, because you won't have any incentive left.
Kristen made a good point that right now, we're not getting enough revenue currently because it's not developed enough out there that we could probably even make an annual payment. And so we're only getting 100,000 a year. That's probably
I
not
bet
enough
debt
to
service
make a payment.
200,000 probably on 400.
So we would have to be
4 million.
supplementing with general fund money to pay off a bond until the area continues to develop and it can support that, so.
It's all important information to have.
So a little bit more background, I don't know if it's apples to apples, but I participated on a Zoom call on the area out in Lehigh that's really, really hot right now. I mean, things are, amazingly going up, but it's not retail. It's office space. And it's Class A, it's expansion of the hospital, and it's a pretty major area. And they said it's very, very little retail, that there's just not right now that push. And I don't know how that compares to what we're trying to do, because I think we're actually wanting some retail, and we want a center place, restaurants are, right now, it's a hard time for restaurants. I don't know that they're really expanding, but I think the only option we have, if we're committed to a center place, a gathering place with not Woodbury, but Ivory Homes, the time's ticking and they're wanting to move forward with housing. If we're committed to that gathering place, knowing not what retail is gonna be, it may just be something else. Are we really willing to consider upfronting the money and securing that option for us, which it's an option. And time will tell whether or not that's a good option.
Mike, can you go back to the site plan that you had that? So Carolyn, what you're interested in is to buy the southern half, right?
The depth, so that
So that's
provides the option for a
that's
city
not-
town center.
Not where the plaza would go. The plaza would be further closer to 700 North, correct?
Right, but if you
So
look
what-
at, to create the plaza and the things that would go around it, for example, if you had, say, a Cineplex movie theater, Mike and I kind of overlaid, we measured, took some aerials of some other city centers and what was their big feature, kind of center feature, and 500 feet really was just kind of narrow to work with, overall to create.
Understood. I would just hate to
Catalytic.
invest all of our RDA money, or CDA money on a parcel that doesn't even front on 700 North. To me, what if somebody else buys that north piece? We're stuck with a piece that's 500 feet off of 700 North. Just throwing that out there, that seems,
Good point.
I don't know, that seems spooky.
Well, with the commercial area, obviously, we've got, the districting concepts and things like that are already in our code, that someone has to coordinate with the flow of that from district to district. And so whatever commercial player came in and proposed something would have to be coordinated with that.
So from 700 North back to the end of the 10+ acres, it butts up against the 8 point. What's that distance?
700 north to the back, it's 884 feet.
I'm talking about to the piece that,
Off to here?
Yes.
It's 500.
that is the 500, okay, that's what I thought. And that puts us pretty darn tight.
It's tight.
I mean, I would love a movie theater.
Oh, yeah.
And we made a run to get one, and, the ones, the Miller Group that do those, the distance is too close to Vineyards. And they said that's the most profitable one they have. Well, the reason it is, Vineyard gave them the property. So if we get a theater and make that kind of a focal point to attract restaurants and other complementary things that would create a gathering place, we're gonna probably end up anteing up to whatever degree, and that's fine, because I think it accomplishes hopefully what we would like to see there.
And the development that, once you have something as a centerpiece, that's, the calls that we did with Mike was wonderful. He has so many great contacts, and he had a whole myriad of developers on different calls, giving us the lay of the land of where they're at and what sort of things would potentially be interesting to them. And they said, hey, sometimes you just need to do that first time incentive, and then you get something cool going, and then everybody wants to come around it. You're not giving incentive after incentive. And then Farmington City said, their investment, they were paid back on their investment much faster than anticipated in the revenues that paid back their incentives. So it's that catalytic, opportunity, and then still having, do we care to create? I mean, the bottom line, the question is many cities in Utah have decided, yes, we do not have a core gathering place that says this is for the citizens of our community, our city center. That is the gathering place for, you know, cool place to hang out on a Friday night date, maybe a place to live, go to work, catch. We have some amazing transportation nexus points that are gonna be happening here with the BRT. And then
Kind
the
of show you
future,
what,
yeah.
you know, what the center would look like if you had Ivory right up to the 500 feet, with your commercial. This one over here.
Do we want a we call this the Lindon Village Zone. Do we want to create a Lindon Village city center? That's the question. And we're not confident that 500 feet, that all the developers said, gosh, that's like one store and parking area, you know?
And I would say you're at least 2 years out, that you would have to at least hold that property, at least 2 years, because right now UTA is projecting 2 years before their ridership gets back to what it was pre-COVID. The business community there, they don't know what their model's gonna be. Are they gonna be working from home, a good part of them, and do they need the office space, or, you know, there's a lot of unanswered questions, that, you know, I think if Lindon's willing to make the investment, you better know that it's gonna be probably a little longer than shorter as far as making that investment, and that's fine. But we need to take that into consideration, so.
Might be a moot point. Ivory might not even be willing to sell, and, or they might be willing to sell if we just give them apartments through the whole thing, but I think it merits conversation and a look, and so maybe we can just instruct staff to, A, reach out to Chris, B, maybe see what some options are. I certainly deserve some conversation from us and some thought, and it would be a tough decision, but, you know, some numbers, what a debt service would look like versus the revenues that we have there, how much would have to come from general fund. It is tough. I agree, the marketplace is changing, retail.
We don't know.
I'm surprised you're saying office. I mean, I think office is dead too.
Well, I think they're still, I mean, they're building office space, and I'm sitting there going, guys,
For who? Yeah.
really?
And to speak to Randy's point, you know, talking about what do people in Lindon want, I think any of us that have had anecdotal conversations is, what does Lindon have as a place to, you know, to have community events? Where do we have a place to go out and have a nice dinner and have some entertainment options? I mean, I think we're not talking just retail here, we're talking about, could we have a gathering place, a village, Lindon Village Center that identifies, this is Lindon, this is who we are, this is where we can have a cool place for, you know, incubator spaces for startup businesses and companies. We have this tremendous, you know, office and community hub, those places that those guys need. When CenterCal looked at this, they said, in their market research, they said no one's really touched the tip of the iceberg on what's called the daily needs. So what really helps a place thrive is you have not just the doors, you know, living there full time nearby, but you have the daily needs met of all the office and the daily workers. And we have you know, several million square feet of Class A, Class B, and down to industrial space within a concentric 3-mile radius. And where do those people go to eat, to have, you know, their accounting services, to have their dry cleaning, to have, you know, hang out and take a client out? Lindon doesn't have any of that really. They're going to other cities. So CenterCal saw this, and other developers, those daily needs were short here. So we could fill a bucket of capital investment. We could catalyze something to bring that in and capture
You know, maybe,
spending power.
maybe an additional thought, 2 other Zoom calls that I participated on, and it's partially to do with UTA and transit and TODs, transit-oriented development and higher densities, and cities are really moving towards that along the transit corridors, and that's kind of the wave of what's going forward, it appears, because all this growth's coming to Utah. two projects, neither of which are announced. They're in concept stages. They're being moved forward by the properties group of the LDS Church. And when I saw those today, I just thought, really, these are major developments, multiple opportunities of housing, to condos, to some density, to single-family dwellings. But the whole project is a rental project. The homes, the condos, everything will be a rental project, no ownership. And no HOA fees, but they'll maintain the properties. And they're kind of leading out, or they've done a project down in Arizona. They've got one in Riverton, and they're looking at one at South County where they own the property. And to me, for Utah, that is just, it's total rental. From a single family home to condos and some density. Wow, I mean, I just thought, that's a whole new look of what Utah's gonna look like.
Sort of an aside, but we just visited some friends in Texas on a mission on a ranch, church ranch. Church has two ranches, a 40,000-acre ranch and a 15,000-acre ranch, right there around Waco. And they're sending money to these folks quite regularly, saying if you see some land for sale, buy it. And that was President Hinckley's, I guess, his thing. He says, land, they ain't making any more of it.
I guess the reason I'm bringing that up is, I mean, my idea of what development is and everything is starting to have to be questioned, because here in Lindon, I mean, we're half-acre lots, and we have done some density, or different, what we say density is. It's not even close to what density is. And you've got a state legislature that is pushing pretty aggressively, because they have the housing industry that's pushing them to take away the zoning from cities. And anyway, it's not the status quo. I think there's a lot of unanswered questions. And so I just implore you to think that through, not to decide for you, but think that through and make sure you land on stability and what you feel is the right thing to do, and then, promote what you think needs to happen. And Carolyn, I applaud you. I mean, you've been both everything in on this, and, I wish things were a little differently, and maybe they will change, but, it's a little challenging.
In Utah, we're only on a pause. Utah has the #1 economy in the U.S. right now. We're the lowest unemployment. We're about to experience, you see it now, there's a housing shortage. We're having a huge population influx and growth. I don't think we can go wrong with just preserving this piece to give us options. It'll only go up in value. Land is only going to disappear. We're going to have a population in 20 to 30 years that potentially surpasses Salt Lake Valley. And that's based on all the state models. So I don't think we're making a risky bet here. Look at what happened, property's gonna go up in value, whatever we choose to do with it. But once it's gone and once it's houses, Lindon Village City Center, could we squeeze something between the two 500 pieces? Maybe. I'm not saying that's not impossible, but this potential would be off the table. And we have to decide quickly. We can't do a long, dragged out exploratory thing. We'll have to get those data points and be willing to take a risk and pull the trigger on this if we want to preserve it.
Just finally, the one thing that gives me pause is, I believe I'm speaking correctly here, we're just assuming that the school district's going to be on board with this in terms of if we do some incentive or some increments.
These numbers
Don't include the school district.
No, I understand that, but if we're talking about doing what we want to do with the property and so forth, I mean, we're going to have to do some kind of bonding or increment financing. And my understanding is the school district's not even interested in talking to us until we can show them something that we're going to actually do. Is that a mischaracterization?
No, they've told us no.
I think
Yeah.
that we've always been under the
Multiple
understanding
times.
that they're not,
Well, the
They've told
presentation
to
we
our
did
face.
in August of 2019 with
remember
the
that.
board, I had several of those board members come up to me afterwards, and they were very positive about what was presented there. Of course, what was presented at that point, we thought we were on the cusp of
Sure.
something maybe coming together. It's not necessarily gonna be that or come back, so, but yeah, I had a lot of positive, feedback from the board, and so I don't think it's a definite no, no way, no how, under any circumstances. But we would need to plan on, in case there was minimal to no participation, but I saw a crack in the door open there, I guess, I would say. And Jake and I met with, one of the superintendents not long after that, and I think there was openness. I think there was a little bit of a change to openness there.
I
So,
agree.
I don't think it's a foregone.
I think we'd have to
Negative.
have, I think if Center Cal had wanted to move forward at
Yeah.
that
They
time,
were
then I
excited
think maybe
about
the door is open, but I agree, we'd have to have something pretty concrete, pretty nailed down.
So, Adam, do you have what you need to try to get us additional information, and then the time clock is ticking, and, you know, at least get us to a little bit more informed information that might be helpful in guiding the council and having that discussion, okay? Next,
Just a quick overview of, we just put on that Horizon issue, that 2024 committee, we'll talk more about that, we've got some time there, so.
but not much. But not tonight. How's
well,
that?
it's more time than the 4 months to
Yes.
get going on.
Yes. But thank you for acknowledging that.
Yeah.
Just wanted to highlight some cost savings and things that have happened here recently that were beneficial financially. Last year, Chief Adams kind of started the process rolling with Zions Bank and Ken Garf, and then Mike's been able to almost finish that vehicle transition, and so appreciate the chief rolling that out. Combining those 13 vehicles plus the 2, and we were doing that every year, and so we actually combined all 15 into a lower rate, and so that was positive. Just a reminder, this last July 1st, we started this 3% employee participation on our monthly health insurance premiums. Collectively, that's about $19,000 to $20,000 a year that the employees are now paying towards their health insurance. There was some vacancies over this last fiscal year that weren't filled immediately, and then some of the departments have actually made do and made efforts there to get the work done without filling those positions, and so appreciate those efforts, and it's saved some money that was budgeted. We did highlight just the grants that we received in 2020, and then listed those out, and this is the year that they were awarded. And keep in mind for our employees that usually it's a 2 or 3 year process after those are awarded, that there's a lot of follow-up and activity, and so the work just begins applying for those. But we have talked in the past about a grant incentive program, somehow trying to incentivize employees to apply for those, because it is more work on their shoulders. That's still on the radar, but we haven't finalized anything there. So going on to that next page, we mentioned the third-party engineering expenses already, that's a benefit. We discussed sales tax, building permits. Phil, do you want to talk about how we are with construction and permit revenues?
I think Carolyn kind of brought it up, Ivory, they were just going as hard as they can, plus all the other projects we've got going on. Mark Weldon just started building 6 and 7, Wilson Tech project, it's just, both markets are just pagan, even with inflated costs. Ivory is actually, doesn't have enough manpower to do what they want. They'd like to start one a day. That gives you some idea of what's happening down there. So what you're talking about, that land is gonna be consumed, I think everything available is gonna be fast-tracked, even though costs are through the roof. So we're at full capacity downstairs.
Yeah, it's 10 years what they project to catch up to actually provide the housing that's needed.
And I think that, yeah, I don't think they'll.
And I'm not sure they're gonna catch up with
They're
that,
not gonna catch it,
but
even
it's
with
that
what
far
they're
out.
trying to do at the state level
Yeah,
and what they're trying to do with accessory dwelling units is not gonna
yeah,
fill that way.
not even touch it.
Nope.
Because a lot of those already exist.
Yeah, they're just trying to make them legal. I
Yeah.
think. So,
Thanks, Phil.
yeah.
Impact fees, just an FYI, we expect over this next fiscal year, we'll be putting into the budget to update the stormwater, water, and sewer impact fee, capital facility plans, and then those impact fee studies that come with that. And then construction phase services fee, this is something we mentioned last year. We're continuing to refine that, and that'll be a discussion that we'll bring forward, that some fees may need to be amended there. Jumping into some of the anticipated personnel issues, has been alluded to here, we're a growing city. We provide a lot of services, almost every service that cities 10 times our size are providing. And so we support a lot of needs in the community. Chief, do you wanna quickly talk about the reserve officers that you will likely be requesting here this year?
Sure. Right now, we have 2 reserve officers that come out to supplement officers on vacation, sick, training, whatever. We're finding that they're able to maybe do 1 to 2 shifts a month just because of their other full-time positions at their other departments. I'd like to increase that. We do have a 3rd one on the books, but he's rarely moved out of state. He's more of a training, so technically I'd ask for maybe 1, utilize that. I'm anticipating potential traffic issues, everything with the construction of the temple starting, so this would also enable me to put out a few extra part-time shifts to deal with traffic issues, things like that coming forward. So I think these positions will help us cover our coverage when we're short, and also prepare for the future a little bit without having to request another officer or anything for the next couple of years.
And I had kind of lumped vehicle requests towards the end of this, but maybe while we're talking about the reserve officers, can you give them a heads up on your thoughts here?
So, in looking at our program, we, especially with going through this transition with this leasing, it's been a nightmare, trying to replace every vehicle with the guys off, getting their vehicles here, getting them switched out. When our reserves come in to take a shift, they're having to call an officer at their home to go get that vehicle, or have that officer meet them up here, something to transition with some of the equipment. And it's kind of burdensome. My suggestion would be that we obtain another vehicle for the reserve program. This will enable us also with transition if a vehicle goes down and needs repairs, anything happens damage-wise like that, we can be full flush and running with that extra vehicle. And anticipating maybe some costs of that, right now it'd be perfect timing. I know it's maybe a budget amendment, but my thought was to purchase one of these leased vehicles back from Ken Garf that's already marked, it's already equipped, that would save us, be more efficient in the long run. It would incur additional equipment costs just to put newer equipment in one of the new leased vehicles, but cost effectiveness, that's a time-sensitive issue because that vehicle's due within a couple of weeks, so it's one of the tail end ones we have left. So vehicle-wise, I'm looking at that. Just back to that reserve thing also, I've interviewed 18, 19 people, and there's not one of them I would hire because of their baggage from other agencies, use of force issues, a lot of things. So I'm talking to a lot of other agencies, the smaller agencies, chiefs, and they're having some of the same kind of issues. But I'm hoping maybe this reserve program will get us some people here to see how well the community runs and support, and maybe draw in some decent people that way too. That's the vehicle.
Put them on a horse.
Some of them would love that.
So would this be a purchase versus into the lease program? We'd be purchasing?
Yeah, it would be a purchase, so the city would own the vehicle, and I would anticipate it not running as much, so we could utilize it for years down the road.
So this is unique because of the time involved on this. He needs a decision on that specific vehicle before we'll have our next meeting. Are you guys willing to give a head
I'm
nod on
supportive
that
of it.
action, and then we'll bring that forward on our March 1st budget amendment?
Yeah, that sounds wonderful.
So buying it versus leasing another one, walk me through the costs. It's just cost
Yeah, so
beneficial.
to purchase that vehicle back, it's gonna cost us just under $33,000 to own that vehicle outright. If we lease another one, it obviously costs, down the road, Chris, I'm not sure what the exact cost of that is for another 2-year lease, incorporated in that. Then we're dealing with, obviously, extra equipment and.
We would have to
graphics
start a
on
new
it.
lease,
Start a new lease program from
a
that.
new lease, just all the paperwork and everything, because the other ones,
And that vehicle would stay parked at the city center, not go home with the individuals.
That vehicle would be
Right.
here, which creates, obviously an extra vehicle, so if we have an animal control issue, we could jump out and take care of that, I could go take care of that, whoever is here at the station, there would be that vehicle here to utilize. Cost differences, if we go buy a new truck, just outright, it's, for the vehicles we're
60, 70.
purchasing, it's up in 50s. So that cost wise, if we wanted to lease, we just obviously have to start that process again and go through that program, which I'm not opposed to, whatever the council.
Do we get our
says.
government beneficial police rate on the purchase as well? I know we get some pretty good rates on the lease.
that 30,000-ish amount was our government rate.
Yeah, so I was looking at comparable vehicles with the ones we have. That vehicle alone, they'll probably turn around and sell that vehicle for 40 grand. 41,000.
Well, and they're exceptionally well maintained, the one you're buying, because
Yeah.
the arrangement that we had with the lease.
Everything's good. The one we're looking at is the last one, and it's been taken care of probably, better than the others.
There's no restrictions though you're not so tight in the budget, Kristen, in that area that we couldn't take care of in that. Oh, do we?
We're getting those for that government rate. If there's a problem or an issue, we could, I hate to say it, but we could
Flip
take the
it.
decals off and flip it and probably make money off of that thing
We could
in
send
the
an
next year
officer
or so.
down there.
Money.
So,
No potluck for Adam's birthday.
You get asterisks involved.
But just looking at it efficiently, it's already equipped, it's already graphics, it's ready to go, ready to put into place, but I'm willing to do whatever you guys think is best on that purchase.
No, we'll
if
lean
we
to you,
purchase
and
that one.
that's what we need to do. Sounds good.
Thumbs up from me.
Okay with that.
we'll bring that officially then at March 1st is we've advertised for that public hearing, but I didn't think we would make that window, and so thanks for your guidance on that one. Public Works.
Van, do you have a comment? Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I think I'm okay with that, but and I know there's issues, but we have so many vehicles and they all drive them home and drive them back, and I know there's benefits to that. But that's an incredible expense to have that many vehicles when we don't have many. I think that's something to be looking at in the future, how to, and I know everybody likes their own equipment and you like to know where things are at. I understand those types of things. But for the dollar cost, I think we've got to start at some point looking at ways to use those vehicles more efficiently, if that's a fair request.
Just a quick response to that, in looking at the size of our department, if something were to happen, a disaster, an emergency response, and I need those guys here, they're gonna be less likely to, hey, I don't have a vehicle here, my wife's got the car. I've kind of dealt with some of these issues in the past, but yeah, you're right. It is something I'll consistently look at efficiency-wise. And it is, who knows where gas prices are going and fluctuating with that. And so restricting them personal use and things like that obviously is in place, but having those guys able to respond quickly is important.
I recall too, and I appreciate what Van's bringing up, and just let's always look how we can be best serve efficiencies. But interestingly, in our last 911 emergency scenario, we did the scenario was a spill over at Geneva and 700 North, and the gas plume, imaginary scenario, caused that the roads were all closed. There was no north-south access, and I remember in this room, some public works employees, but also officers saying in that situation, you'd need a police vehicle to go through, whatever traffic issues there were, or through barricaded situations. I don't know in a plainclothes, vehicle, could you get around everybody in that situation to get to the epicenter of an emergency? So.
Yeah, there's definitely things to look at. If you take, have agencies that have cars just parked at the station, guys come in, check them out, we're gonna lose people. I'm having a hard enough time tracking decent people, and if they realize they.
It's kind of rite of passage, right? If you're gonna hire them, you're gonna give them a car, pretty much.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. They're funny that way, but yeah, I'll definitely.
When I've talked to officers one-on-one, and they loved it, they want to know where everything, I've listened to all the great reasons why they have them, but just as a bigger, maybe it's one vehicle, two vehicles that use, and maybe that's what this purchase is, it starts to give us some of that flexibility. But it's an incredible expense, as you know.
Okay. Let's keep moving. Good
Thanks.
comments.
Public Works, Juan.
So I want to show you how we're restructuring personnel at Public Works. We're a little too top-heavy on supervisors and not enough workers. So we already started this shift by moving Gary from the street department superintendent to be more of a specialist that takes care of the cemetery, assist engineering with steel street maintenance evaluations for the roads, and maintenance of the fleet, and also safety. With that move, then we move Matt Winward as being the superintendent for the water department, but because they're always digging on the streets, they kind of take some responsibility to fix the streets. So we made Heath Peters, from being a streets operator, moved him to a lead worker. So when they're digging on the streets, Heath is an excellent operator. He goes and assists with the excavation. But then 2 or 3 days later, after we do the repairs, then everybody turns around and follows Heath's lead to do all the street repairs. So that way we have a crew of 4 instead of a crew of 2 trying to do all the street maintenance. In the sewer department, Kevin has announced his retirement. He will probably be leaving in August. That way we take advantage and merge the departments from stormwater and sewer into one. And that way we have, instead of one superintendent over one person, we now have a superintendent over 3 people, and then we have our seasonal position there that we still fill in the spring to work through the summer. And then here the idea is to create also a lead operator that will mostly be on the sewer side, since the sewer has a few more emergencies and more equipment to maintain. So we're trying to promote somebody to be a lead operator for the wastewater. This way we now lower down from 5 high-paying positions down to 3, and then we're able to get some help for Paul, that he takes care of all the SWEP and all the stormwater regulations. We take those away from him, and then he can concentrate on running a good maintenance program, infrastructure maintenance, all that, all those things that are kind of not being followed through very good. And then we create a SWEP inspector that also does blue stakes. The water department usually has about 300 to 400 blue stakes a month. So that takes care of that person going out for a couple hours and just marking our utilities. With that said, also stormwater and sewer also send a different person to mark their own utilities. So we're now having 3 people respond to mark the utilities. This way, we'll be able to consolidate all the blue stakes marking onto one person. That person will take good responsibility on making sure that the maps are accurate and be more familiar with what he's marking on the ground. And also, create a backup to our public works inspector. Things are getting crazy, and sometimes he needs a little bit of help, so that person will also be, have a little redundancy in that position. And then also we would like to entertain the idea of getting us a GIS intern. Right now, all those responsibilities fall on Noah, and he can't catch up with being able to do the GIS updates very regularly, so we're kind of falling behind on the mapping. Our mapping is our only most reliable source of seeing what utilities we have on the ground, and we have to protect that infrastructure from being hit.
Quick question. These gentlemen, or these people that are being retasked,
Right.
are they redlined, or they take a reduction in pay and they're okay with that?
So, Paul Miller is actually a lower grade rate, so he will actually be getting probably a rate
Increase?
promotion.
Sure.
Heath Peters, the operators are a rate 13, and the lead man will probably be at rate 14. So where we're losing a rate 20, we're creating
Okay.
two lower rates and be able to
That makes sense.
spread the responsibility, motivate people to stick around for better positions.
In our policy manual, it states that if we restructure any departments, that we can't decrease their salaries. And so
Yes.
those that were restructured or moved around, they're still paid the same if they're still here. But we are looking at proposing, starting in July, some adjustments to some of those ranges based on different duties.
Okay. Sounds good.
So the inspector and SWIP position would be proposed as a new full-time, and then the GIS intern is
Right, it's,
pretty limited part-time.
Yeah, like about 700 hours a year.
The lead operator under Paul, is
Right.
that a new position or is that labeling Matt
That's
and?
That's just labeling a lead person, and then probably this
One of
three-
those,
these
yeah,
three
one of
people
those.
will probably apply, they'll
Okay.
probably announce it in-house.
Questions on any of that?
Just
That's-
projections, dollar cost is always a,
And with the changes where we're reducing two higher paid supervisory positions, we expect this will probably be about a wash because we're adding a new full-time. And so, at some point, Gary will retire and we likely would not refill that spot that he's in. But that could be a number of years off still, we haven't penciled that out, but we will.
it all looks really good, but you always want to see how the dollar figure hits.
On the far right, I'd move that other person up just to balance it more. You've got three in a row and then one by himself. I'm just kidding, I'm pushing him over there.
Those two look about the same from here.
Building department, Phil, do you wanna talk about
Sure.
that new position?
We've looked at this position numerous times. We tried for 2 years to fill this position, but based on what we offer, we can't get anybody. That market hasn't changed. If anything else, it's probably just got worse. And inspectors throughout the state, in probably another 3 to 5 years, all the gray heads like me will be gone. And no young people want to take that position on, so I think we need to get somebody here. We had 3 inspectors in 2008. That person aged out and the economy went down, and so it was perfect timing. But that has went by really quick. That's quite a few years just to be a 2-man department with what we've done. And we're still pushing that, and I could not do that without Gary Hoagland that works and never stops. But we need to fill that position. The need is great now, but it'll be even more in the future. Need to get some new recruits in and get that started, that process started.
Any suggestions?
We can advertise again. I think what we were offering before we'll probably have to increase that about $4 an hour to even get an entry-level person in.
For police and for this position, some other cities are offering signing bonuses where if you come on with us after 6 or 12 months, we're gonna give you a lump sum bonus. I mean, we've gotta start getting creative, but, we're struggling on a few of these, so.
So unless the economy tanks again,
There was a evening news, I saw, I can't remember what station, Channel 2 or Geb Gaghard or one of those guys did a whole thing on this topic, that building inspectors, the whole industry is struggling here in Utah, and with our explosive growth, it's a huge hole to fill, and they just can't, and they think it's
all the
exactly what you're
reasons that
saying.
people came into the industry back when I did, the good benefits, 401k and all that, that doesn't mean anything to this current generation. It just doesn't.
You don't see staying with a job forever, you know,
They,
you hop around now to the next opportunity.
that generation doesn't exist anymore. Sadly to say, but it's true. So that's what we gotta start planning for, is trying to get somebody in, that'll be a young, less certified person, but hopefully good experience and the right personality to get started.
So $4 an hour bump, you said you get an entry-level person, that's about $9,000 a year.
Yeah, so right now, the last
More,
time we
9,000
advertised.
more.
The last time we advertised, the job opening was like $20 an hour. Well, the problem is, and I've said it so many times, it is an old story, but yeah, people get a job at Ivory sweeping floors for $21 an hour with 0 skills.
Okay, so that'd be 9,000, and then the moving clerk 1 to clerk 2, what, just off the top of your head, do you know what that?
Don't know that number.
Okay, it's not gonna be substantial though, I'm
Yeah,
guessing.
and on all of these are just, again, high level, we don't have those exact numbers yet, but
Okay,
that position downstairs, we had some personnel changes in that clerk's office. It's the two department secretaries, and Marcy and now Shelley are down there. Carolyn Shepherd retired. They really do the same functions and the same roles. Just one is putting in a fewer hours, and so we felt like to be equitable, we really needed to move that to
it
the
makes
same
sense.
range.
Well, in addition to that, last week we started to transition business licensing down to community development department, and so Marcy's gonna help she's gonna be the main person on business licensing.
You've been trying to make more brick with less straw, right?
Continuously.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing you have to kind of remember also is the money that a small department generates shouldn't be a revenue source, but it has been a revenue source for a very long time. It should be a wash, and that will be a discussion item, as always, the legislature. That's what some of the things, the discussions you're seeing up there is about. So.
Thanks, Phil.
Just one last thing on that. We've always discussed the code enforcement percentage versus the building inspector percentage, and not to be too offensive, I know how old you and Gary are. Do you see this more as a replacement and less code enforcement?
Well, for right now, it definitely has to be building inspections, for sure. And I think if anything slows down in the future, that would.
That's the fallback.
But we've got about 4 years of code enforcement backup that needs to happen. We could probably have 2 people full-time right now to do what we need to do.
And that code enforcement, that is just in your department, it's nothing that is other issues of code, I mean, are you talking about just building code enforcement versus?
No, code enforcement is anything around the city that you see that is not building related.
And I know at one time we
Maybe
talked
a lot
about
of
Officer
stuff,
Clegg helping with some of that, is that,
He's doing some.
Anders and I do quite a bit.
okay,
Officer Clegg helps us with some of the bigger things.
right. But there's still a big chunk that needs to be done
It's-
that by your
The
department
majority of what
specifically.
we're doing is complaint driven.
And we're not
being very
even
proactive.
We're not even touching it.
To that.
Okay.
Just,
Yeah, we're not doing
there's
anything
not enough
proactive. really.
manpower to take care of what's there.
I'm still comfortable with that, though.
Okay, Thank you.
Just an FYI on merit and COLA, collectively with our current employees, that would be approximately $165,000. And so if the COLA is approved, that would be effective July 1st, and then if there's a merit, it would be the following January, so of 2022. We have moved to that new 12-step pay scale that we talked a lot about over the last year or two. So that was effective in January of this year. Based on we've been looking at Kristen's crunching numbers on our comparables for COLA. We would estimate about 1.4%. And then just as Phil kind of mentioned, we're struggling to keep up on some of these pay ranges with some specific positions. It's been since 2017 and 18, since we did our last comprehensive citywide market study, just to make sure that we're competitive with those pay ranges, and so we'll be working to try to complete that before June. With health and dental, we don't have numbers yet, but historically that's been every year an increase between 5 and 7%. But then we've made adjustments and changed or switched providers to try to save money. So we're just in a wait and see mode right now until we get that bid out. And we work with a insurance and benefits consulting company that actually takes that to the market for us, and they are paid by the insurance companies, and so we actually don't pay for their services. That's through the insurance providers. And FYI, we have contracted with a company to start a new timekeeping software program, and this is a number that we'll bring forward with our next budget amendment. We had anticipated this was gonna come up, and we've tried some other methods, and this one looks like the best option for us right now, so. Let's see, let's jump into capital improvement projects.
All right, I've got some handouts to give you here.
Kristen, while he's getting ready to do this, we see numbers that in our road fund that's kind of backed up because we haven't used. I'd like to know what new money did we provide, last year, the year before? Not just what's stacked up and it makes that number look big because we haven't used it. Kind of our track record of what are we doing, what's our trajectory, maybe the last 5, 6 years. Is that too hard of a thing to?
I don't have it in the.
Oh, yeah.
Juan's actually gonna cover some of that, so. Go ahead.
So, I heard the comment that our roads are in such shape, and some of them are, but we're getting a 5-year plan going for road maintenance. The update is that in 2019, we spent $1.4 million, and those highlighted roads that you see there is what got treated that year. In 2020, we spent $1.8 million, and that's the job that Geneva Rock just finished in the fall. We got some really good prices, and we got quite a few roads taken care of. This is the proposed budget for 2022. This year, we are doing the road maintenance project at 1.5 million and about $100,000 worth of crack sealing. The Canal Road project has been in the works for a few years, but we are finding out that the road needs some engineering done to replace the water line, so we don't go fixing the road, and if we don't replace the water line, then we're gonna have all these water leaks ruining the road again, and that doesn't reflect good on Public Works for sure, or the city. So we are doing the engineering this year, but the project we're estimating, this is hopefully a very inflated or conservative number of $1.6 million. That is to replace the entire water line from Center Street all the way to 630 North, including all the small cul-de-sacs that go from it. In 2022 and 2023, we would spend the money of 1.3 million to finish the road complete from edge to edge of the gutter, and end up with a road that we feel good is gonna last for many years. Then we move on to the Center Street improvements. So on Center Street, this year, we're planning on replacing the steel water line that we get quite a few water leaks from Main Street to 200 East. That's with a cost of $335,000. That's also for the same purpose, that we don't want to be building a road on top of a water line that is springing leaks all the time. The next part of road projects. We are foreseeing spending 1.8 million this budget year, and then the next 2 years we're about $2 million to finish the rest of the projects on Center Street. On 2022, that we're doing the engineering for the curb gutter and sidewalk, maybe building those improvements in preparation for the temple opening in 2023. And in 2024, we would do, well, that's 2023 also, that's when the temple opens, it's at the end of 2023, is that correct?
This is page 3.
23, or, I can't remember now.
So it calls fiscal year 23-24, but I think we're gonna be doing the improvements in the fall of 2023 to have the road completely done from 900 East all the way to Main Street, and possibly even to the State Street with a new seal coat, not quite a full road reconstruction. That is our
So Van, to kind of allude to your question, Juan's studiously working on a 5-year plan that we hope to present as part of this budget this year. And then as part of all of that 5-year maintenance plan is the Center Street aspects of that are wrapped into it. But so for this coming fiscal year, they were anticipating about 1.5 million. So that would be bid out this coming fall, winter for work next 2022 year. That would leave us about 900,000 in our fund balance, but some of that 900 is going towards center, and then we're also getting an additional 500 from our Class C funds, and so it's always rebuilding itself. It's never.
Certainly, I just want to know, because sometimes we couldn't get the contract when, and so it stacks up and looks better.
1 year where it should have been to the previous year.
Right. Yeah, so this right here, then it says that in 2022, we're spending 1.5 million just on the regular roads, on the regular maintenance that we do with $97,000 worth of crack fill. So we do the crack fill the previous year on a road that the following year is gonna get a full treatment. So that's why we kind of do the crack fill, and then the next year we apply a better treatment. In 2023, we are spending $1.26 million on the regular roads all around the city. We're putting $25,000 for crack fill, but then we have the $500,000 that we do at that time to start doing the 900 East curb and gutter on Center Street. On Center Street from Main Street to 900 East. And then we're starting to bank money, so we show money spent of $2 million in 2023, but this $200,000 kind of banks to the next year, just a way of keeping the numbers even. Those $200,000 will carry forward to 2024, and on that year, we'll do less on the regular road maintenance because we have the big projects to do on Center Street and also on
So I have a question.
Canal Drive.
Some of those parcels that I'm seeing here are unimproved, open land where typically a developer would incur the cost of curb and gutter, sidewalk curb gutter. And I-
On Center Street?
yes, so like the Main Street to 100 East.
There's a couple.
So when those do develop, do we have a way to recapture that investment?
We can look at that, and that's on that third year, so that's kind of our final year. Yes, we have a way that we can do that. We basically create an assessment.
I know we don't assess homes that are, grandfathered before, but there's some chunks along there.
This will be a broader discussion that we'll have to get into is how serious do you want to approach that? Because our long-term concern is that you've got a lot of properties that we may have to acquire right-of-way just to put in curb and gutter and sidewalk where it's existing homes. And so just something to keep in mind. We'll talk more about it as we get closer to that year.
Yeah, let's just keep that kind of in the back of mind.
Yeah, how much,
Potential recapture.
how much do
option.
you want to push? We're gonna take your property and make you pay for the improvements. That's the
I'm thinking
dilemma.
specifically the vacant.
Yeah, I think she's
locations.
specifically
But,
focused on.
but even on the vacant land, we would have to acquire their property to do that.
But there'd probably be some consideration of the value we're bringing to it and.
Could be, I'm just throwing that out there, cause if
Yeah.
you get a lot of opposition, are you willing to push that? That's gonna be the dilemma.
We do a pioneering agreement with private developers. If they go in and put in infrastructure and other people come in and benefit from it. We could, our code allows us to do that for city improvements, but there is we always put a sunset provision
on
in
it,
there.
yeah.
And so there will be that in there as well, so those are things that
I
we
guess
have to-
my concern is if we're gonna pay for it for people that have built a home a year ago and don't have improvements, but we're not gonna pay for it for the vacant property next door to them, how do you justify that? That's my concern, is I think that would inflame some feelings, but.
So one thing we do, currently do is on developed pieces of, Center Street, for example, somebody builds along that street, we do mainline assessments for water and sewer. There's a footage rate. We collect that on all those parcels like that. So the only thing you're talking about is curb gutter and asphalt. We do collect a good share of money off those assessment rates. It's in our fee schedule. We do it all the time on the land.
I'm thinking specifically over by the city center park, because there was, on the master plan, someone was looking at parceling the back acreage there just next to the city center park, and they were going to be charged potentially, because it's on the master plan, to have like an extra wide pathway there. And they were asking.
I don't know which one that is.
You're talking about the Jarvis property?
I believe so.
Dave Frost
Just a
was the
J-
developer.
What?
Frost was the developer. Yeah.
So I think they had to pay some sort of impact fee of that nature,
Yes.
even though they aren't
For
being
the
required to.
platting of that lot, to be able to
Yeah.
sell that
When
lot.
there's subdivisions and developments, they do pay.
Yeah.
This is gonna be a city-initiated project, though. I'm just floating that out there. I
It's
just,
always good to
we'll
have both
talk
sides
more
of the
about it.
coin.
We've got a couple years still, but, okay.
Just have to pay kudos to Juan, and the balancing has to do with all of the maintenance across the city, and that we have these two projects. Center Street probably was not on the scope until the announcement of the temple. That had been a little further off, but with Canal, that's imminent, and we need to get that done. But also the coordinating of the timing of getting Canal done and Center Street without causing an impediment to getting to the schools. And, I mean, he's really working a great plan down there, and it's been, I don't know, it's been really wonderful watching how he's been working his department down there. I've enjoyed my assignment in his department.
Yeah, definitely is gonna be a timing of rebuilding the water line the previous year in the fall, and then in the spring, do the road, so it doesn't overlap with the building of the road on Center Street at the same time. So we're gonna try to space them out in the season, one in the spring, midsummer, and then the other one towards the end of the summer, so it won't be concurrent.
He's very cognizant of our city, and I'm really appreciative of Juan's effort.
Thank you.
Good.
Mike, anything you wanna say about this general plan update, or?
No, just 2 projects, I'd like to work on next year, is updating our commercial design standards and our general plans getting older, so maybe we need to take some cracks at that too.
And these are for outside consultants, the 10 to 15.
Yeah, we'd probably try to do most of the general plan stuff in-house for the most part, but yeah.
Parks and Rec, one item we wanted to ask about, so in our current budget, is still this approximately 1.3 or 1.5 for the Hutchison Park property from various funds. I drove by the other day, it still has a for sale sign in on it.
You haven't had any calls or anything?
Have not heard a peep.
Yeah.
And so, just curious, is that something you want us to carry forward?
I'd reach out reach out to him just to get an update, see if, let me just ask.
Latest on the first right of refusal.
They said no.
They weren't willing to give a first right of refusal, but they said if they got an offer, they would contact us. So it's kind of the same thing. That's how they couched it.
In principle, it's there, in principle, they're objecting to it.
Okay, I'll follow up and then get back to you guys then on that one. On, Keith mentioned he's just gonna keep plugging away on capital facilities, improvements on his park master plan, pavilions, pickleball courts, benches, playgrounds, all of those types of things. And then mentioned that he expects our landscape maintenance cost is probably gonna go up this next fiscal year because we'll assume Anderson Park, what is it called? Anderson Farms, is that what? And that's 10 acres that could be transferred over to the city once Ivory finishes building that, and so.
When do you think they'll build that?
They're in process right now. And then they're hydro seeding, is that?
Yeah, they're gonna turf the front part with the playground and stuff, and then hydro seed the back, so it might not, that portion might not be added until it's established. Maybe even by fall, I don't know, depends on when they get it down, but it'll take a while.
They've already got some curb and gutter in the parking lot and things, you'll have to go drive by and take a look, so. But yeah, I'm assuming by 2022, it's
We'll have
gonna
it.
be pretty much ours, and so that's why it would go into this budget, so. Police department, chief, really quick, you wanna mention these 2 items there?
Sure. So the radar units in the patrol vehicles are extremely outdated. They're non-functional. They're supposed to be calibrated every shift to ensure they're accurate, which runs into court problems if they're not. So I'd like to replace 10 of those. They're about $2,500 a piece, but it make things a little cleaner other than just trying to gauge speed and pace to be a little more accurate on what we're doing out there. The dash cameras, currently Lindon doesn't have dash cameras, we have body cameras. I'd like to get dash cameras for liability purposes, to have the evidence at scenes in case we do have traffic crashes, roll up on any type of traffic incident. We have a broader view of what's going on. I was involved with homicide investigations with Corey Ride and feedback from Lehigh on their officer shooting, and those dash cams are imperative for evidence gathering to locate suspects and to show a whole scene rather than just body cam. They sync together, the dash cam and Axon body cameras. It's pricey. Its initial start's $50,000 to buy the equipment and for storage, and another $22,000 annually just for storage. So dash cams are pricey, but liability-wise, I think it's the way for us to go in the future. So I'll provide more details on that later.
Something for us to consider, right?
Yes.
Okay.
That's that's how most of this is tonight.
I just wanna make sure, tonight, we're not committing to a whole lot, we're just kind of putting it on the table.
This is heads up.
Coincidences between now and June.
Going on to that next page, for vehicles, Public Works, we're anticipating we'll be surplusing 3 older trucks, and then replacing with 2 new ones, so we'd actually be decreasing for the fleet, and then they would be looking at surplusing 2 of their bobtail flatbed trucks, which is basically, it looks like a miniature dump truck without a dump truck bed, it's a flatbed, if that's my layman
Yeah, well,
explanation.
if you want me to run by this real quick,
Oh, you got it, there you go.
We are replacing a generator at lift station number 2. It's just a replacement. The one that is there is since 1995. It's an older generator with a lot of older transfer switches. We're replacing 2 snowplows bobtails with 1 new one. The bobtails that we're replacing is a 1995 and a 2005. Because the nature of the salt that is with it, a lot of the equipment is rusted, deteriorated, and it's sometimes not operable and keeps us from getting to the pushing snow soon enough. We're also looking at replacing our mini excavator. This is a 4.5 ton mini excavator. We're trying to go with a 6 ton. This one will allow us to do better excavations on the road, have more strength, power to rip through the asphalt, and sometimes to replace a water line. Instead of digging all the way across the road, we find the water line by the main. We find the water line at the meter. We connect a new line to the meter side, and then we actually pull the old hose, and then pulls the new pipe through it. So we need something with a little more strength to be able to do that, and then that saves us time on digging the road and then having to repair it. We're also replacing those 2 F-150s, and we're replacing it with 1. The one from 2012 was an old police truck, so maybe we can now go from Public Works to the police department. Parks, that's right.
Buy it back.
Building. And then we're replacing 1 F-350 with a diesel engine, single wheel axle with an F-350 gasoline dual wheels, and then this one will have a 4,000-pound hoist that we can actually go and service the PRVs and sewer lift stations easier. Right now we have to kind of rig some kind of hoist and then do it. It's not safe. This will really help prevent injuries in the field. And then this one is just one new idea that we're copying from quite a few other small municipalities. They have this asphalt hot box that we can actually use it to keep the asphalt hot through the winter, and we can actually go do on potholes with a better mix and make them last longer. The other good thing about this hot box is that when we go do asphalt, when we order the asphalt, we're kind of guessing how much it's going to take, pretty close. But most of the time we end up with a ton or a ton and a half left just to make sure we have enough. And then that asphalt we can dump in the yard, and then we can actually reclaim it in the winter and doing better use of that asphalt, not just, right now the ton of asphalt, it's almost $90 a ton. So it will be a good thing and then we can make our...
Do we have the compactors that we need?
Yeah, we got a new roller this year. We got a new plate compactor. This also will come with tack, so we can actually tack the area so the asphalt will make a better bond.
But that's a 2008 you're looking at purchasing?
What's that? No, this is just a picture.
I understand in that.
No, the 2008 is the F.
Oh, that was just a whole lot
it's
one before.
Yeah, so I'm talking about the last bullet point.
Yeah, I just didn't know if that
Then I
was...
just put the picture
Okay.
there of what it looks like.
So what does that run? What cost?
That one runs $45,000. In the wintertime, if we wanted to do asphalt, we have to send the truck to about 72nd South in Salt Lake. And then we have to tarp it, bring it back, and hope it stays hot enough to do the patching in the wintertime.
Does that run on propane?
It runs on diesel. It's a diesel heater. We went and looked at Pleasant Grove's unit, and they use it summer and winter. And
I'd like to know how
So
much
you
patching we
you
do.
just bank that,
40,000
either the
for
leftover
machine,
asphalt and then heat it in this hot box?
Yep.
Or then you get a surplus of it in order to use it? Can you get that raw material to then put in the hot box in the wintertime easily without having to, is that a
Yeah, so
commodity you
we
get?
can do either way. We can send this to, sometimes Geneva Rock here in Orem opens a few days in the winter, and then we can actually go and load up to
Okay.
4 tons of asphalt.
Okay,
And then the problem in the winter is that it cools up so fast that this way we'll be able to keep it hotter, and we can actually be able to move it easier and end up with a better product.
how often do you, have you had the need, head off and pick up the hot materials during the wintertime, approximately?
Well, this winter, I saw you one day, we were patching that day here at the school. We did, we had a good day. It was in the 50s, so we went and got a full dump truck load.
Yeah.
But when the weather is bad, you know, that's why our roads are not in the best shape, because when I got here, there wasn't even a good plate compactor to do proper road repairs.
So when you get those reports of potholes along the way, then you can take this hot box and within a day or so, go out and just fill those right up without having to, gotcha.
How long does it take to heat it up with those hot boxes if you have a cold load of loading from your shop?
The idea is to load it in the previous day, and then just leave it on with the diesel burner overnight, and in the morning,
It's ready to go.
it's ready to go back to about 270 degrees, which is what the asphalt needs to be at to be able to get compaction and good adhesion. And I wish I had one of these when I was doing asphalt for 13 years. We didn't have it. And that's all I have for equipment in public works.
Okay, thanks, Juan. Police, we already talked about this reserve officer vehicle. On that chart there, these are proposed maintenance projects on facilities from our facilities manager, Alex Roy-Lance. About 80% of this is carryover from last year because we put them all on hold with COVID. So most of this is just projects that didn't get done in this current fiscal year. And he's estimating high on this, and so these are higher rough estimates, but pushing around 500,000 is what we would anticipate, so.
I have a question on those.
Yeah.
Is it anticipated to fix any of these windows with, got the,
That
have
has
separate?
not come up yet,
Okay.
so.
Alex is the one that would bring that forward then? And just an aesthetic problem, I'm
Doesn't
sure.
have to be Alex, if
Okay.
that's some, we can get estimates on that, but there's a lot of windows that for whatever reason have those, and so. Is that something you want us to look into?
It's just aesthetically displeasing, but that's all it is at this point.
Okay, I can
That's
ask him to look into it
Yeah,
and at
just-
least get a number.
Get a number for
and we'll see.
discussion.
Okay.
So none of these listed on the capital maintenance projects, that's not been funded in the previous year?
About 80% of these were funded in our
And we
current
pulled it all
fiscal
back.
year.
In the tentative budget, but then
Then we pulled it all
we
out.
really got hit.
Another 1,000 new money, rough and tough.
Let's see, other significant issues, just a couple other really quick items. I sent out this email last minute. I wanted to get your thoughts on these papers out here. We got a response from Van and Randy. Any other?
I just ran out of time. I'm okay with what Randy said.
Replace it with concrete and put up a big plaque. I don't know of any long-term commitment that we made on that. I mean, it's been more than 10 years. It's been going on what, 12, I guess it was 2008, is when we built the aquatics.
Bricks
long as
Black,
there's-
and
as
their
long
name
as
is
there's,
somewhere
yeah,
else.
some
We tried to get
notification
them
or
a plaque, I thought it was,
recognition.
Yeah, I'd like to see those bricks go back to them, because I would, if I had a brick, I wouldn't want it
Oh, I see
out
what
there
you're saying. I
randomly
thought you
thrown
were
around,
taking the
so
other.
I'd wanna know where my name is.
What is their
Do you
level
feel
of
like that's
expectation of
something
having
that
made
needs
the
to
donation?
happen
That doesn't make
right
sense.
away, or?
there's current chirp hazards there right now that
Yep.
we have to fix. And so I think the guys were looking at it as saying, hey, we gotta pull out a bunch of these anyways because the etching on the names was going bad, that you can't read them. And so we were pulling out enough where they just said, shoot, we're pulling 3/4 of this thing, let's just redo the whole thing. So it was 18,000
To fix that.
for new pavers that had a different material that wasn't so heavy grained, and so the names show up better on the engraving. So that was re-engraving all of the existing 75 pavers out there that had the engraving on it, and then redoing the pavers. And then it was, the bid that Alex got was 10,000 on tearing that out and putting in concrete.
Can we stamp some of that?
We can ask, yeah. and
I
do
just
that.
think it's something
It would
aesthetic.
match,
Would be nice
the
to stamp.
aquatics deck out there, so.
It's just something pretty.
Not a legislative issue per se, but I just, some people may ask, and so.
When do we discuss the ability to put more than 25% of the general fund balance?
So if that passes the legislative session, we won't know that here for another week and a half or 2 weeks. But I think it, as I recall, it passed out of the House.
I
don't
think
know
it's
where
gonna
at.
happen.
One or two.
Carol and I were at a meeting, we heard from Kurt Bramble and Kevin Strand, and they seem very optimistic
Yeah.
about
Yeah, I'm
Sounds like a
confident it's
done
got a lot of
deal.
support.
Yeah.
So what I anticipate then is our department heads will keep kind of refining numbers, and the intent of this meeting was not to scare you off, and this seems like this happens every year, everybody starts getting wide eyes when we're throwing out these big numbers, but that's what I'm asking for them to do, is give me your big numbers, the things that are more significant that you anticipate, and then let's get that in front of you guys to start thinking about it. We're gonna plug everything in and see how that fits and what we end up with reserves and road funding and everything else that's part of the whole process. And so, overall though, good financial outlook. We've had a very positive year. Off the cuff, most of these things seem feasible financially, and so we'll keep talking about it. I want to thank our department heads. We have an awesome team at Lindon City.
Yeah.
So, thank you, all of you.
Interesting in that.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? Are we doing okay as staff for you, as elected officials?
Thank you for everything you do, all of you.
Okay, thank you for your guidance and direction. We'll have our next meetings March 1st. So,
I think that's when the legislature ends, is March 1st, isn't it? I think that's what it is.
Dan, need to make a motion?
yes.
Adjourn.
Second, third.
Okay, Van and then.
Got it in, first time this year.
Oh.
Carolyn, in that meeting we went to, was it your impression that Bramble was so pro SB 61 for the?
Yes.
It was almost as if it was.
His mind's made up.
He's like it was his bill.
Yeah, exactly. He was just, Mayor, he was just so,
It's like, well, city has not been fair.